Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to digital health enthusiasts from around the world. Thank you, everybody, for joining the February version of the HITLAB Digital Health Symposium, a review of evidence and the review of what is going on in the world of digital health adoption over the last 30 days since our January symposium. This month's symposium is going to be focusing on the digital heartbeats of healthcare and how digital is revolutionizing health through AI. My name is Stan Kichnowski. I am chair of the Healthcare Innovation Technology Lab. Thank you all for joining us. And remember that we have a packed schedule today. And also remember that we have an open chat on our program. So we would love it if you could link in with all of your fellow attendees from around the world. Add your LinkedIns on the chat, add your emails, whatever you want to add. Maybe not your emails, but anyway, you get the idea. We want this to be a dialogue. We want this to be interactive. You've got my LinkedIn there as well that Sammy just posted in there. Thank you, Sammy. And certainly link in with me, connect with me. Would love to hear your comments about the program. Any ideas that you might have for future program technologies or topics or speakers, leaders in the world of evidence and what's actually working in digital health. And as you can see, we have a packed schedule. Take a look in front of you just on the first hour. We have everything from what's happening with digital health and adoption in Europe from our own Laurent van den Berg from Paris. And then we're going into what is happening with one of the startups, one of the hot startups that are coming out of Paris on clinical trials platforms. Laurent's going to be interviewing someone from Milo. And then at 11:30, we're going to talk with a leader from an interventional cardiologist who's doing amazing work out at Stanford. And then we'll be going into at 11:40, talking to a on-the-ground chief of medicine from San Joaquin General Hospital and talking to him about what's going on with digital in his area of the neighborhood there. And then we'll round out the first hour alone with a hot startup that's happening in Brooklyn, a labs company called the Proficient Labs, and looking forward to talking to the CEO and founder, Unica Alexander. So that's just the first hour. And I can see that the chat is already picking up nicely. Really good to see everyone getting to know each other within the open conversation that we have during the symposium. So thank you all for that. And don't forget to submit any questions as well into the Q&A box if you have any questions during the symposium over the next 3 hours. And then we will dive into, again, anything that you have during these sessions, and you get to know the moderators and the speakers over the next 3 hours as well. With that, let's go to the founder and the CEO of Balas Invest and certainly talk to Laurent van den Berg. Hey, Laurent, how are you doing? How is Paris doing?
Hello, Stan. Hello, everyone. Paris is doing very well. Actually, it's a good day now. We are back to sunny days after almost like a fall weather, and looking forward to the discussion.
That's fantastic. So if you could just give a 2-minute introduction to yourself and your fund again, just so the audience knows who you guys are.
Yeah, so I'm actually investor in digital health, focusing on Europe, with a particular focus on the growth stage. Really, the theme for me is scaling up across Europe and then expanding globally. And I do that on the back of 25 years experience in healthcare. And my partner is based in London, so we really have a European coverage.
And the audience really wants to know what does the European digital health landscape look like following 2024, which was, again, a bigger year than 2019, 2018, 2017, but not as big as what we saw in 2020, 2021, 22, 23. What were some of the things that you saw happening in the landscape in 24?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows some of the challenges that companies face, especially in this year of uncertainty for the last, let's say, 6 months in Europe. But what is very striking to me is that we are passing, in a way, maybe it's a tipping point where for the first time we see very significant, very high value companies moving to the next round. It's not anymore a number of startups, small who succeed a little bit, but scale up starts to be a reality. Remember, I told you we had identified about 3,000 companies in digital health in Europe, 1,000 at this growth stage. What you saw last year, a number of transaction exit of value above 500 million. So it's really becoming super real. And I like to mention always this case of Clue Points, which is a Belgian company acquired by EQT in July 24. I think it's really an example of maybe the tip of the iceberg showing what's happening now in Europe. Really, these high potential scale up companies becoming visible and real.
That's wonderful. And so, what are some of the promising fields that you're seeing? What are the 3 or 4 startups that are standing out to you, and in what fields are they in?
Yeah, the 3 fields more mature here that I would mention is really tech bio or AI in drug discovery, digitized trial, which is obviously how you do the trial with digital tools, but also real world evidence, how you manage the quality of this trial with digital, and then the patient identification. So that's the second field, digitized trial. And the third one is AI diagnostic, and there maybe with a zoom on AI imaging. And I'll mention 3 startups that I on purpose take not in my portfolio, but outside of it. I would mention Immu Bioscience in UK. I like this one. It's in mostly disease profiling, immunology. Take a look at this. I think it's a very interesting one. I'll take also Cure8. That's in imaging, but more like chest imaging, respiratory. And then they'll also cover cardiology. It's a very promising area, but also an area of high unmet need. That's why pharma companies are spending so much time on it. And then the third one I mentioned, and you may remember a year and a half ago, I had mentioned it as like maybe a promising company, Ziwig, Ziwig. That's a company who has commercialized saliva test for endometriosis. I think it's very revolutionary. It just got reimbursement in France, expanding in many territories internationally. So watch these.
That makes a lot of sense. I think we're seeing this in a lot of other areas as well. So that's really helpful to see. And are we at an early stage of scale up and global expansion, or are we really getting there at this point?
When you have about 1,000 companies identified at this stage, I would say we are really there. Of course, there is a lot of these 3,000 companies that are not coming there. So you have to manage 2 elements. One is that's the moment to accelerate them. That's why I'm also focusing on these growth stage levels. There is actually a huge potential there. And these companies need the funding to accelerate now. It's not for the future. It's not a nice story to work on. They are there. And then there is a second case of companies who are just right before, and we need to help them pass a number of milestones so they can really qualify for that. The challenge with growth stage is not like buyout where you are there, you just need more cash, or startups where you also know you are there. I think the growth stage is we need to pick these companies right after takeoff and before the big inflection point. And of course, when you pick them, they are not immune of remaining risk. So as investor, you still need to be ready to take a bit of a risk and look with my partner, because we have been healthcare operator for many years. We think we can bring them a lot of value.
That makes a ton of sense as well. And what are some of the big things that are happening in 2025? Some of the big dates and some of the big events that you're going to be attending in 2025, and what would you recommend to our audience in terms of them attending those things?
Look, I'll start with April 1 and 2. It's not April's Fool, but it's April 1 and 2 in Paris, between HITLAB and at Hotel Dieu. Really, this meeting focusing on scaling up across Europe and expanding globally. That's really, I think, putting together US and Europe leading digital health organization, and really spending 2 days with scale-up startups, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and investors to see how we can concretely accelerate, on these themes. Scale up across Europe, expanding globally. For the last 10 years, every country have developed a really, really prolific ecosystem of startups. But now with the coalition of people, we really want to get to the scale up stage. And so mark your agenda, reach out to Stan, reach out to HITLAB, and we'll get a very, very interesting and insightful 2 days. So that's the first day. The second great meeting that I really advise people to go to is, of course, Vivatech, which is happening in June. It's happening in Paris. So that's really an important go-to meeting. And then the third one, that's one I've been going to for now 3 years. This one is going to be the third year. It's in December. It's in Bruges. It's really organize a meeting between investors and startups. It's really just focusing on that, in a way, the pitch or the meeting of the two. It's a bit more than a speed dating because it's happening on 2 days. Really just focusing on these, getting startups, meet investor ready to invest in them. So this is happening in December. These are the 3 meetings. And of course, I on purpose only focused on Europe.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And so one of the things that we've also seen is that there's a lot of very nice translation of digital health technologies from Europe to the US and vice versa, from US technologies to Europe. Maybe you can walk through 1 or 2 of those that you've seen and how they've really helped change patient care for the better over the last 20 years. I mean, like, Metadata is a great one. I mean, now it was founded in New York City by Glenn DeVries, out of Columbia University Medical Center. And then, it obviously grew to be 70% of the clinical trial software market over the last 20 years, 25 years. And now it's owned by a French company, Dassault. Yeah. And so that's a great way where you saw American digital health innovation really traveling around the world. That maybe you could talk a little bit more about some of the European digital technologies that are making their way into the US market.
Yes, no, definitely. I think that there is one that, people may know, but I need to mention it. It's Okin. It's a French funded company with actually 2 legs, one strong in Paris, one strong in the US, funded by a French doctor. I think in terms of TechBio, it's really an example of where you want to get to, because in terms of scale up, they really already managed to get quite far. Did some very strong partnership with many big pharma, and now continuing to obviously accelerate with some milestone in terms of delivering with that, which is always the question that people ask. They, I think, made a lot of progress in terms of disease understanding with some very strong insights. They are obviously working on candidates profiling really to deliver on these milestones I was mentioning, and expanding also the span of disease that they are covering. So that's one. I think 2, I have to mention, this one is in my portfolio, but I like what I do. It's Wondercraft, the exoskeleton company. Interestingly, they were in one of the HITLAB meeting in New York last year. I think they made actually a lot of progress in their sales in Europe, selling north of 6 million in Europe, and now preparing to launch in the US. So they have an exoskeleton for education, and they have rehabilitation, and they have an exoskeleton for day-to-day usage. It's very interesting how they very well prepare their launch in the US, and watch them for second half of this year. So that's the second one. And then you have Kinaps, and actually you have a few who are actually in AI imaging. You also have TheraPixel, who's getting into the US, that is actually getting there, not just because they want to, they are copycatting the ones already in the US, but because they come with some superior technology. And of course, they can make some big advance and bring some very strong benefits. So it's very interesting to see them. They didn't go there being an early startup with just a great idea and let's just get into the US because it's a better market. I mean, many of the companies who do that, they generally fail because it is complex to get into the US. But these companies who manage to really pass the first scale-up milestone in Europe and come well-equipped, they generally are a lot more successful. So that, again, that's why we push the accelerator in Europe to get a lot more that can expand there.
That's absolutely fantastic. I think we're seeing a lot of that as well, and across that, and maybe just as a prelim to the summit at Hotel Dieu, maybe give the audience. We have a lot of folks from around the world who don't understand just the prestige and the preeminence and the historical significance of Hotel Dieu, where the summit's going to be located April 1st and 2nd in Paris. Maybe you can give people a little bit of the history of this amazing institution.
Yeah, I mean, look, for the people who don't know where Hotel Dieu is, I mean, Hotel Dieu is on the parvis of Notre Dame, so it's just in front of Notre Dame in Paris, right in the center of the city, on the Île de la Cité, so island of the city. So it's really in the middle. So you have Notre Dame on one side of the square, and on the other side you have Hotel Dieu. It's one of the oldest hospital in France, few hundred years. So you see a long history. And Hotel Dieu as an hospital is part of a APHP, which is Assistance Publique Hôpitaux de Paris, so which is Paris Hospital and Public Assistance. So that's the acronym for the biggest hospital group in Europe. It's about 18-20 million of patients. So when you think about innovation in digital health, when you think about application of digital health, when you think about scale up of digital health, it's obviously the place to be and partner with in Europe. And for them, it was very natural to do a meeting with HITLAB associated with Columbia, because Columbia has very historical, strong ties with a lot of institutions in Europe. And of course, working on health, digital health, and expansion in Europe before you expand globally, I think is a theme that is very important to obviously the French healthcare community, because you don't just do that for your own city, you do that to impact the largest number of people. So there will be a big, obviously, a great springboard for this theme. They will bring a great audience there. And again, I mean, you are in a way, the center of Paris. And if you're Parisian, I'm Belgian, so I will say it and you can laugh, but people say also it's the center of the world. So obviously, what better place to do a meeting like that?
That's fantastic. Laurent, thank you for your time today. This has been absolutely illuminating. And again, appreciate the evidence that you're bringing to bear here on the program. Greatly appreciated. And with that, we're also going to be handing over the microphone to Laurent and one of the hot startups in the Parisian ecosystem. So Laurent, handing the virtual stage over to you and to Milo.
Yes, thank you, Stan. And here I introduce Chance. Chance, are you on the line? Yes, you are. And look, Stan asked me in the previous session, talk about some very innovative leading company that is transforming basically digital health. And the second question he was asking me is that are they just starting, or are they really now putting in the market, making it available to doctors and hospitals, some really kind of shaped a solution that has already started to demonstrate its impact. And I think Milo is right into that, right focusing actually on these on this segment, and it's the typical very innovative solution. I mean, you may have seen the title for the presentation today of Milo, basically the next generation clinical trial platform. It's really that. And I will not say more. I just give the word to Chance. We have been working with for quite some time together. I'm quite impressed by what he's able to do. I can tell you we also have our debates, but you will enjoy what he has to show you now. And Chance, I give you the words, and I'll finish just before we finish the time. Then I'll finish with one question to ask you once you have done the presentation. On to you.
Thank you very much, Laurent. Thank you very much, Stan. Is this going to be interactive, the presentations, or I should go until the end to present Milo?
Yeah, maybe James, you can go on with your slides. So that it's important people understand what Milo is. I think you have some very striking facts, and then maybe 2-3 minutes before the end, I'll get back and ask you a few questions.
So, do you see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, sure. So what we are building, we're building electronic data capture. So based on AI, but I will explain why. So what is first clinical trials? Like, I'm going to simplify the process. It's a scientific process of data collections, of evidence of medicinal product. So we want to prove the performance and safety of that product. So, and the data we collect, so you do the experimentation on patients, and you're going to observe what's going to happen to that patient. And that observations, the data is going to come up after you do the experimentations. It's going to come up through two forms. One form is is the audio form, because you're going to ask the patient questions. How do you feel? What is the temperature? What is your feeling about, like, the quality of life, etc., etc. So you have a number of questions the doctor will gonna ask, and that data audio will come out later on in the form of notes in the EMR system that is going to be pushed into the EDC. The second form is textual. So you want to also see beyond the quality of life. You want to see, like, what happens in the biochemical level on the patient health. So you want to do biological lab. You want to also collect some imaging, for example, X-ray, etc. So to confirm at the biochemical level that the medicine, the drugs or medical device is working and is performing as it is intended. Okay, so in this textual data, so it's going to be so form PDF stored in the EMR, or it's going to be also so form of paper that the patient comes comes with this paper to the doctor, and then the doctor needs to curate that data and put it into the EMR system, and then it comes into the coordinator level, like the clinical research, which they're gonna take this data that is stored into the EMR, and then they're gonna push it into the electronic data capture, because I said in the beginning, the clinical trial is a process of data collection. So this data, we have to put it somewhere in the 90s. So we're putting this data into a paper, okay? And then Medidata comes in and say, okay, let's digitalize this process. So we have moved from paper into electronic data capture, but still that manual process of capturing the audio data and textual data and pushing it into the EDC, that still has not been resolved yet. And this is what we are working on. So I'm working on moving from an inert, passive electronic data capture into a new kind of electronic data capture that has the capacity of vision, has listening capacity, has reasoning capacity, and therefore it can able to take actions. Okay, so why we bring in this vision and listening? Again, it's the two capacities that is needed to collect all forms of clinical data in the process of the clinical trials. So now so let me move into this next slide. So what does actually Milo do? So with this capacity we bring in here, so it's going to do three things. It will have the capacity to find the patient and find the patient immediately, like while he's talking to the doctors. And second of all, it analyzes the doctor-patient interaction through the audio, through what is listening, and it's going to summarize the discussions and then take the clinical data required by the clinical trials and type it into the EDC. And the last thing, it also can fetch into the EMR system and looking for textual clinical data required by the EMR, because remember I said audio and textual, and it only finds the clinical data required by the clinical trial and write that into the EDC. One thing I need to mention that is different to my competitor is this Milo doesn't require to EMR integration. It is agnostic to the EMR. So it works whatever EMR is. It is multi-language. So currently we do French, English, and German. just require an hour setup. So you need to make a training to the doctor to be used, but this is like an hour. It's so easy to use, and therefore this three capability makes the platform really 100% fast scalable. So
Chams, if I may interrupt, this is fascinating. If I understand well, on one side you do you basically identify automatically the patients that could be relevant for the different clinical trial. So you take away from the healthcare professionals all the burden of the patient identification, while on the other side you still provide a service to doctor and healthcare professional while they do the consultation. So you save them all the administrative burden and so on and so forth. So you provide value and you take out burden. Is it correct?
Exactly. Yeah. You did that into very precise words.
And if I'm taking a bit the shoes of my American friends and so on, who might say, "Oh wow, we have plenty of this system around." I mean, do you have any comparison already between Milo and some of these generative AI tools that we see a bit all over the place?
Yeah, I think you heard a lot about this Copilot that has been pushed all over the world. Nebula, for example, and many European Copilot who also analyze this textual, this audio information and write the notes for the doctor. So it really indeed exists. But for us, that's just one compound of the tech, because it goes beyond just writing a note. So that capacity of understanding the contextual conversations between the patient and doctor, allowing Milo to analyze the patients that he's talking right now with the doctor, to see if to which clinical trials this patient should be eligible. And then, from the audio, from the discussions, Milo will not be able to identify all the eligible and exclusion criteria. And therefore, this is why Milo need to read over the EMR as well, because all the data and other information are sitting there. So it's both capacity of analyzing the interaction of doctor and patient, but also the capacity of reading the textual information sitting within the EMR allows Milo to be effective at 85%. I have also data to show in which precisions Milo has been tested and proven to be the sensitive capacity, the precision rate of Milo. So this has been tested also. I'm having here.
Yeah, maybe on this one, James, it's interesting. Yes, I can see you're moving to the slide there, and I'm sure the audience want to see this comparison. I mean, I've already seen it, but it's a bit mind-blowing, actually, on the differentiation of Milo versus the current AI models.
The other models that analyze the patient, are you focusing here on patient identifications?
Yeah, no, I'm in a way I'm asking, and I know you have some data on that, on how Milo compared to other systems that people may know on your different functions, writing, matching, vision. I think maybe if you have some data, it's worth sharing.
So this is the first of its kind, but I think some other platform with this capacity will see the light very, very soon. But this is the first in its kind from my knowledge so far. So we don't have really electronic data capture that exists that have this capacity at this stage.
Yes, and are you okay to share? I know you have a slide that shows the comparison with like ChatGPT
yes.
and Cloud 3. I mean, this one is a bit mind-blowing, actually.
Yeah, so we made a test of Milo versus the large models that exist currently, ChatGPT, Claude, Llama, etc. So we did it on the capacity to find the patient immediately while he's talking to the doctor, and this is the precision rate of Milo, so 85%. So it could get much better with the time. And this is ChatGPT, this is Claude, and this is Llama models. So they're almost so 50% yes and 50% wrong. And then the capacity of Milo to transcribe and write the notes on behalf of the doctor, the precision is at 95%. So we only made 5% error. And the Milo vision capacity, so to read the textual information as we read in the pixels, so this is still under evaluations.
You know, it's maybe Chams, I'm also here managing the time a little bit, but I have two important questions, because I know it's obviously important when you think about developing Milo and so on. Here you showed us what it does, you showed us how it is, how superior it is versus some existing systems, so it's very promising. What about the cost impact for an hospital in terms of using Milo versus using human? Then the question I will ask you right after is, what are the milestones for you in 25? But maybe let's talk about the cost first.
Yeah, this is really mind-blowing ROI. So I asked all the investigators, because I have a clinical trial CRO. So my daily work is to find the hospitals and contract with them to run the clinical trials. So I asked every investigator to tell them, what is the minimum time it takes you to capture the informations, like from the audio, from the text, and push it into the EDC? They said, oh, minimum is 30 minutes. So if it is 30 minutes, if you want to process 1,000 of patients, so the human being need to spend 20.8 days full time, and you have to pay for it. And with an error that ranges from 2% to 22%, because it depends on the site's experience and the trial also complexity. So Milo, it takes 0.5 seconds to process one patient. So if you want to process 1,000 of patients, that's 8.3 minutes. And this has been validated in a clinical trial setting. So this information is not coming in my mind. So it is tested in a real life, in a clinical trials in Germany and France. We call this evidence one. And in terms of costing, so if you sum up all the manual data process that a human do, and also the error that the consequence of the error of that, so in average, it can be high, it can be small, depends also on the complexity of the trial. So we have 5,000 euro per patient. So we hope that Milo will drop down the trial cost to 500 euros per patient. So this is the testing on real life that demonstrate what I am saying. So this is evidence one trial has been already finished in Montpellier in 100 of patients, but also there's also another trial has been finished also in Germany with the Professor Axel Scholz, also for 100 of patients that demonstrate what I'm saying. And currently we launched multiple European trials. We call evidence 2. So this is in France, and evidence 3. This is in the UK. So in total, we're going to have 1,000 of patients for 12 months for multi-European country to prove that the Milo really process, reduce the time, reduce the cost, as we are claiming here.
Look, James, it's fascinating, and of course, then time is passing a little bit, so I have to ask you a bit of a concluding question. And of course, anyone here listening, don't hesitate to get in touch with James to share ideas or talk with him. But my last question, James, is what are the key milestones coming ahead for you in 25? The things you want to demonstrate that are critical for the company?
Yeah. So here it comes. What is Milo? Milo, it is so my vision from the beginning was to create a medical interface liaison officer. So it's like I think you heard that everyone, like this bigger program, they are working on general AGI, okay, that general super intelligence. So it requires very large models, very large training set, etc. We are focusing on create an AGI, but it's not general, but specific for the clinical trial. So you can imagine that this platform that will able by its capacity to analyze, for example, the adverse events, to know if this adverse event is associated to the medical device, yes or no. It can report on itself the adverse event to the competent authority. It can analyze by itself based on the queries, etc., which sites will require to have physical monitoring. It will, by its own, analyze if this patient is likely to be dropped out from the clinical trial or not. So that therefore it will provide recommendation to the doctor whether, if he finds this patient, whether he need to get him on board or not. So we look into super intelligent platform to work autonomously, like the human being, so we're trying to get this between 2026, 2027 at maximum.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chance. Thanks a lot for that. And again, I say it's really fascinating because I know you've been from HITLAB and developing these in an accelerated way. So I assume if it continues like that, I mean, where we're going to be at the end of 25 and 26 is going to be quite amazing. It's a lot of work. I mean, we are always smile here as a conclusion where you are, but really fascinating. So I encourage people here listening to get in touch with you. Any ideas you have, or if you want to test it in the hospital, or any investor, if you want to invest in Milo, please do reach out to me, to reach out to Chance or Stan. We'd be happy to put you in contact with the company. And on that, Stan, are you back on the show here to take on for the next session?
No, fantastic, Laurent. Great interview. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, just a great session all around. And again, that gives our audience around the world an idea of what's happening within the ecosystem in Europe, and just seeing the tremendous innovation coming out of digital and coming out of the system there. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Laurent, for that. Next up, we have another guest who is coming from another ecosystem coming out of the US. And again, Mohsen Sadat is Chief of Medicine at San Joaquin General Hospital. And would love to just have you start, if you could, Mohsen, just a brief interview, a brief background on yourself, please.
Sure. Thank you for having me today, San. So my name is Mohsen Sadat. I'm a trained internal medicine doctor, trained actually at San Joaquin General Hospital. We're located in Central Valley, California, kind of underserved and one of the few remaining safety net hospitals in the area. So I did my training here and stayed on as a clinical faculty, mostly in academic community hospital setting, basically. Became the program director, so very involved with the residency program and training, and then the chair of medicine for the past 7-8 years. I also working on clinic sites with our chronic disease management and lead a fantastic team for heart failure, basically clinics and follow-ups from discharges in the hospital. Really, I got a lot more interested in this, listening to all the previous guests that you had, in how we can collaborate with our technology colleagues to bring the best medicine, especially to the area, underserved and partially underrepresented and short in resources. I think this is going to be the best case scenario. So I'll be glad to chat a little bit from the providers or consumers' perspective. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Maybe give everyone a little bit of an idea of the context of San Joaquin General, so that the number of beds, patients per year, some basic demographics and that sort of thing.
Oh, sure. So it's about the 200-bed hospitals. It's the only trauma center in here. As I mentioned, it's a community and teaching academic facility. We do have a lot of subspecialty and primary care clinic affiliated sitting in our own campus. And again, mostly dealing with underserved Medicare population, but definitely big in academic and teaching as well.
Wonderful. And in your experience, Mohsen, what are some of the reasons for slow implementation of AI right now that you're seeing in clinical medicine, even though we're seeing hospitals, especially for things like AI and transcription, using it now at a rate of about 50%, even in the last 2 years. And for the 50% that aren't using it yet, 30% of that is actually, of those folks are adopting it or in the midst of implementing it. What are some of the reasons for slow implementation of AI in clinical medicine?
Yeah, it's funny that we think it's a slow, but I really think it's a comparison, right? The rate of growth and excitement that's all around AI in the last couple of years really is unmatched, and we just need time to catch up, I think, with some of that technology. But I can touch up some of the points. I think anytime that you come up with a new technology, it's often there's a lot of excitement around it, and it kind of lead to a little bit of an unfocused, experimentation across different application. By that I mean, when you look at the structural framework, for example, for evaluation on some of these AIs that have been implemented, really there's not that much good data. If you look at, I think I was looking at the JAMA articles in January 25. That shows basically studying on evaluation of efforts made on LLM in clinical setting. And strikingly, only 5% of the data was really real patient data out there. There was finding a kind of fragmentation and in mirroring basically the actual clinical use. So these are the issues that are, I think, important for clinicians for us to be able to adapt this. Another thing is lack of basically guide rails. We are so used in medicine with the standardized performance metric, and I don't think we have a actual structure on this still. Lack of skills in using and keeping up with the data, I think that's another huge thing, and that's really on us. But again, the speed that it's moving makes it a little more difficult to catch up. Disparities in usage. You mentioned that there's a lot of big university centers that are using it, but still there's a lot of smaller areas that has a high concentration of patients that they haven't been tested on yet in that area. I mean, these are all the areas that I think we can improve on and catch up. But I think those are some of the reasons for slowing down. Another big one, I think, the lack of detailed cost analysis. For us, that's very important. And smaller healthcare system, I think cost analysis becomes very important. And except in the area of radiology, really, we don't have that much good data that we can go with. There's a promise of $200 to $300 billion saving globally with bringing Gen AI, but I don't know if that's also counting on the cost of implementation, cost of training, cost of monitoring, cost of maintaining all of these or not. So I think those are 4 or 5 areas that kind of make us put the brake on it a little bit.
That's fantastic. And talk a little bit about agentic AI, right? Our audience here today, again, global audience, also very much high executives from hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, certainly health plans and health systems and life science companies, pharmaceutical, med device, as well as government executives and researchers and startups and investors. Tell us a little bit more about, they've got various levels of understanding of AI, from rudimentary and what they read in the press to detailed, and they're creating some of the most advanced AI in healthcare today and life sciences. Maybe you could discuss a little bit about agentic AI and what you see as, number one, after you define it for everybody, where do you see the opportunities for it to help patients and physicians? And where do you see the challenges in terms of its implementation and whose cloud does it sit on and things like that?
Right. So this is very interesting. I think the agents in AI in general have become one of the hottest topic right now. And in healthcare, and I think the easiest way for me to do, if my understanding is correct, and to explain it to my residents and my faculty, is that instead of having basically separate AI tools for different tasks, you basically have one AI agent to control all of them. I think that's a simple way that I'm thinking about it. Now, you can have multiple AI agents. Patients can have an AI agent. I can have an AI agent, some specialists can have an AI agent, but that's the whole idea, to basically pull all of these data together and have an agent presented. So, but I think it's important to note, so that's a fundamental shift actually from using AI as a sophisticated calculator, the way we used to think about it, to now deploying it as an agent. I think going from something that was very passive and reactive that you were used to, and we set up all of our basically metric and evaluating tools on, to now going to something that can take initiatives and actually can propose solutions. So to me, the use case is amazing. You fall in love with the use case actually, but again, the technology is what has to keep up. What we're talking about is basically potentially navigating the whole EHR, complex EHR system, and bring in and piece together all of these fragmented data and actually present it to myself as a clinician, to allow for our subspecialists to talk to each other at that level, bring all of these histories and interaction together. So it sounds wonderful. Now, the challenges that I see in some of this stuff happening is really, again, goes back to what kind of sensitive information we might basically entrust AI models with. And I think that's a huge discussion to have. Again, we need some framework on evaluating and regulating, and basically you find the proper use and usability on it in the actual clinical setting. Because remember, now it's not anymore a passive tool. It's something that needs to be evaluated at a much different level that our current evaluating methods allows for. The performance of these AI agents obviously needs continuous monitoring in different settings, because basically you're constantly looking at the safety and accuracy of the data. What are the appropriate cases? I would like to look at it as it has come out as a clinical teammates. I mean, that's how helpful they can be. But when I look at it as a clinical teammate, I look at, let's say in academia, when I have an intern that rounds with me, so that intern's very good at collecting all the data, put the relevant information together, come up with a little summary and present it. But he or she had gone through a lot of training to get to that level to be an intern. I, as a clinical instructor, have gone through some training to know how to interpret that data the interns gave me. Which part of those now I have to go back and get my own history? Where do I have to go and go back and do my own physical exam and come up with it? So truly, I'm looking at it as a healthcare teammate. But again, a lot of training has to go to this. Bottom line, I think it needs, basically, we need as clinician compelling evidence to show that these agents are actually enhancing the accuracy, safety, and productivity for our patients.
That's fantastic. Any concluding notes before we wrap up the session about any recommendations or advice you'd give to the folks that are watching from around the world?
No, I think there are a lot of low-hanging fruits that we're already using, in medicine. A lot of it, AI Scribe, of course, is one of the big ones that we're using, the ambient listening device. But to me, I think I am much more interested on working with our tech partners and investors and actually trying to guide, bring the safest thing to the patient. To me, AI is not just about innovation. It's really about improving health, about saving life, about improving equity, and also hopefully reducing costs. So we're excited to get started on it, because the only way you can get ahead on anything is to get started. So looking forward to working and bringing the best medicine to everyone.
I love that mantra. The only way to get ahead is to get started. The only way to move forward is to get started. That's really good, Motion. Thank you very much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
It's a tremendous session with Dr. Mohsen Sadat from San Joaquin General Hospital. Again, doing a lot of really good work with AI and putting together a lot of good programs for patients in that San Joaquin area. And again, as we're moving through the top of the hour here today, we're fortunate enough to have the CEO, co-founder of one of the hottest startups in digital health in New York City, the Proficient Labs, which is a lab management system that's helping save lives by making sure that the R in research and development and the D in research and development is actually being done with the highest levels of quality that are possible. Particularly considering that we have a lot of those studies being run by grad students and postdocs who are doing lab research for the first time. One of the key areas that we really need to do in the United States and around the world in our global R&D system is making sure that we actually have a lab management system in place, really as a check, if you will, as a check and balance, to make sure that we've got a very good quality management system and a very good way of ensuring that the protocols are being followed in the study. So anyway, that is very, very interesting. So I think before we do that, though, we're going to hear from the Breakthrough Alliance chairman, Bill Taranto, who is the president of the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund. And if you haven't heard, then you heard it here first. The Merck Global Health Innovation Fund has now added another $250 million in investments in cash, and is now a $750 million digital health fund. So if you don't know who Bill Taranto is, again, Sammy is going to pop his LinkedIn address into the chat. Please connect with him. They have an extraordinary amount of resources and connections. They help everyone from seed and below and to get funding, but more importantly, they really do a good job of, and they primarily fund ABC round companies, but they are extraordinary. They funded Livongo, which sold for $18.2 billion. They funded Preventus, that sold for over $1 billion. So one of the better funds out there, by far the largest digital health fund in the world. So again, really happy to welcome Bill Toronto to the program. Bill.
Stan, I appreciate it very much. Hello, HITLAB and Breakthrough Alliance community. I have the great pleasure today to be interviewing Robert Rodriguez, who is the founder and CEO of Helix VM. And I'm really excited to talk to you today, Robert, so welcome. We always used to like to start, the first question is always kind of the same because we have an audience that may not know who you are or about your journey. And so the first question is always, Robert, can you tell me, the audience and myself, a little about your career journey, how you started and how you became CEO and founder of Helix VM?
So long career journey, I guess, so over 30 years. Started originally in a benefits consulting firm here in the New York area, where I worked there for a couple of years and moved on to business school. So post-business school, I went to the Ross School, University of Michigan. And post-Ross, I went to a consulting firm called Booz Allen and Hamilton way back in the day. And then I went to GE Capital. So did the corporate thing, obviously, post-college. Realized I wasn't a corporate guy. So I thought to myself, okay, let's go do some startup work. And then I had the luck of running into a company called Triana. They were a fintech startup based in New York, an Israeli founder, and did really, really well. Was there for a few years, moved the company out to California, raised money from Sequoia Capital, ended up getting sold a few years later. But company did really well. Had the privilege of working there for a while, but again, still had the bug of kind of being on my own. So, and in none of this, there's healthcare at this point in time. I mean, if you really look at it. So in 2003, I was looking to do something, on my own in healthcare. And my wife said, why don't you move to South Florida? There's lots of old people there to do healthcare. So I said, okay, I'll move to South Florida. And I got into the outpatient medical space, where I basically started to do urgent care, doc in the box type of service offerings. And that's kind of where my real hardcore entrepreneurial journey started. It's obviously bootstrap. It's pretty much you out there in the cold wild. And I've been involved in some way, shape, or form for the last 20 years in some version of outpatient medicine. And then obviously COVID hit. And that's kind of where the Helix VM story starts.
Right. So before I get into some details about today's theme, can you just tell the audience just a little bit about what Helix VM does?
Helix VM is, in essence, a doctor's office on the cloud where we partner with doctors. We're not the doctors. So if you can imagine, when you go into your physician's office, there's people who check in, there are people who take your blood pressure, there are people who check you out, there's people who help you with authorizations. We basically do all of that administrative function, in essence, in a cloud-based environment. And so obviously a lot of what we do is very driven by just kind of understanding workflows of how a medical office works and understanding also how patients behave as well as how doctors behave. And that's, I think, sort of the magic to what we do is working on both ends to make a super high efficient transaction for both parties. And we can do that whether it be on the cloud, or we can do it whether the patient's in your office. It doesn't really, we're ambivalent in terms of where the patient or the doctor are at any point in time.
Okay. So today's theme a little bit is talking about the outpatient experience. And so outpatient medicine has seen significant growth over the past decade. How would you describe the current business landscape for outpatient practices, and what are maybe some of the primary factors driving profitability in this space today?
Okay. Well, I think that, as a person who's been an outpatient for a while, I would say that, yes, volumes have grown overall for the industry. I think that the reimbursement environment is pretty tough for many physicians. I also believe that some of the issues on the consumer side are making it also difficult, because a little bit of everything a doctor collects is what they collect from the patient, right? It's not just the insurance company that pays, it's the patient who also pays. And there's a lot of struggle there, I think, on most physician practices. And so what you've seen, I think, over the last, since I've been in the business for 20 years is a little bit of a stagnation from an income perspective for physician and in the outpatient space, and an increasing amount of physicians doing other things in order to complement that. So if you're a cardiologist, you start to do a lot of ancillary and professional, the technical component of your work in order to supplement that and to have a thriving business, in essence, as a business owner. And so I think that is a struggle, which is to say, physician income or physician profitability. And obviously post-COVID, it was an even bigger issue because for a lot of physicians, their practice just disappeared overnight because they had no method of actually servicing patients who didn't want to leave the house, or for staff who didn't even want to go into the office. So that's kind of where the idea of Helix PM is born, is how do you close this gap where physician and patient aren't necessarily meeting, but you need to conduct medicine in some capacity because it's necessary just to continue to manage the patient's health.
Okay. So Robert, I want to talk a little about artificial intelligence. First, let's start at a sort of a high level, and then we'll get a little more granular. But we're seeing artificial intelligence increasingly being implemented, in healthcare technologies today. Can you share some specific examples of how AI has helped outpatient practices streamline operation, improve patient care, and maybe what improvements you've seen in terms of time and cost savings?
Well, I think the most common use case and the one that people get the most excited about in AI, and we have an AI in our platform, is in essence in decision support for the physician, which is helping with the basics of triage, coming up with a differential diagnosis, helping the physician determine possible treatment scenarios. So in essence, kind of like a mid-level. I mean, I don't know if folks like a physician assistant, for example. And basically supporting the physician in their decision making, because again, one of the things is they got to see patients, right? You got to move patients in the outpatient world. So AI has been very helpful for us in terms of doing that, and in terms of giving physicians, cutting the amount of physician time when actually looking at a chart, or even when looking at a patient. Increasingly, and one of the things that we're working on in our platform in order to help with both physicians and patients, is using that AI to handle the basic questions. I mean, we get tons of questions from patients because we do a lot of asynchronous medicine within our platform. So where AI would be really, really helpful, and we're just starting to really play with it, is question like, what's going on with my insurance? What's happening with my prescription? I'd like to change my pharmacy. And those are things which I think at the end of the day, the use case for AI might be much stronger and much more helpful for the physician community, for the outpatient world. Because, I mean, if you've gone into a doctor's office, there's a lot of support staff. And that support staff is stressed, a lot of work. And AI would really be able to at least take, 50, 60% of the common stuff, in essence, off their plate. But obviously, rolling that out is a little bit more than just a science project, shall we say. So you got to be able to put it in the field. You got to be able to fine tune it. You got to be able to put policies in addition to the basics that most of these AI agents do.
So let's talk a little bit more about AI. While AI has potential, there is some common sentiment that it's not enough on its own to drive substantial change. What do you see as maybe some of the key limitations of AI in outpatient medicine, particularly when it comes to revenue generation or improving actually patient outcomes?
Well, I think that in terms of where it can really help, I think physicians in the outpatient space is, in essence, there are some use cases in the billing space, which is to say to be able to find opportunities to code the claim better, which helps on the professional component. It allows them also to identify additional items that are billable environments for in the insurance space. And that would make a big difference because, as you know, every contract for physicians with a carrier is different. Some of them pay you this, some of them pay you that. There is no one standard contract. And certainly when you move away from the Medicare and Medicaid space where things get a little bit messier in terms of how contracting works. So I think that AI has a really good use case in terms of increasing the yield on a per claim basis to find additional billable events. Where AI, I think, is probably going to take a little bit longer is, again, on the science part, which is helping the physicians sort of understand how should I treat the patient and with what should I treat the patient? So things like, if a patient comes in and they're taking drug X, but it's possible that there could be a use case for a different drug Y, and helping the physician sort of work out the thinking there, because I've been prescribing X for so many years, I'm familiar with it, what is Y going to do? Knowing full well that they're similar, or that there's maybe an off-label or an off-brand use for it. And I think that there's a world of opportunity there to help not just the profitability of the physician practice, but also in the delivery of actual medicine that makes an impact for patients.
I'd like to follow up on that as we talk about the patient. Many outpatient practices rely on a personal, patient-centered approach, which can sometimes be at odds with the clinical efficiency that AI offers. So the question is really, how can outpatient practice strike a balance between leveraging AI but maintaining the human elements of care that patients value, sort of that one-on-one feeling that you get when you actually see a physician?
Yeah, that's actually in the sweet spot in terms of what we're working for at Helix VM. I mean, what we're trying to do is sort of step change improvements. And basically, it starts with a recognition from the physician-patient relationship that there are certain things that the physician wants to know about the patient, but they don't need to see the patient. It's what we call the asynchronous medicine piece, right? Which is, there's a billable event, there's medicine that needs to be performed, and I can use technology in a way that it's a lot of patient self-servicing, while at the same time sort of divorcing the physician from having to invest the time with the patient. Classic examples are things like refills, where I'm not feeling well, I need an antibiotic or something along those lines. Those types of medical interactions many times can be done asynchronously, and AI plays a role in that, and in kind of smart workflows. That should hopefully then free up the physician more time to basically spend to in essence focus on the higher acuity cases that they would have inside their practice, right? Because there's a continuity, right? From the simple to the really, really difficult, from the not too sick to the really, really sick. And so I think that if you use, the AI and you use a platform intelligently, you're able to, in essence, condition the patient to work in a self-service environment, receive the medication and the care that they need without actually physically seeing the doctor, while at the same time, when there is a higher acuity case, identify that patient and basically put it to the top of the queue, so that way the doctor can say, oh, wow, this hit my radar screen. This is really, really important. There could be a major problem there. That is just workflow and policy and clinical policies. Then the beauty of it is that you can layer on top of it some of the, the fancy stuff with respect to, AI agents, video images of the doctor that would allow that patient to have an interaction similar to the one we're having, but actually have it with an AI agent, or with as we call it, an avatar MD. And I think once you start layering that, that's not that far off. I think that you'll get a lot more patient comfort with it. I mean, they'll know that they're talking to an AI, but they'll have the ability to, in essence, conduct some of this low acuity medicine in a very, very friendly environment, while at the same time knowing that the system that are put in place will bump them up if there's something that requires, in essence, a higher standard of care.
So we have time for one last question, and your last answer kind of made me think of this one. As we look ahead, not only just AI, but just technologies that are entering into outpatient care or medicine, what technologies or things do you see advancing the space, even beyond AI? And you mentioned, even kind of using avatars, which partly is the use of AI, but kind of a new way to interface. So just kind of your view of the future.
Well, my view of the future, and again, this is sort of a little bit of a sweet spot, so I'm talking my book a little bit here, but my view of the future is that I think a couple of things are really important. I think the first is, the idea of like kind of the whole monitoring, the hospital at home, and keeping, in essence, sort of a control panel of your customers, right, of your patients, and understanding like these folks are okay, these folks need care. And using third-party data, which is compiled on a daily basis, monitoring, using AI to basically dynamically adjust the diagnosis. And if something trips, to say, hey, this is urgent, in essence, you're escalating it. So I think that using remote patient monitoring tools, which are physically speaking, usually hardware, in the home, connecting it into a system that allows you to, in essence, monitor and let the doctors know where things are. That's really important, for example, in value-based medicine, okay, for the physicians. It also allows them to code things better and bill things better. So I think that's number one. I think the second piece that would really be important is systems that allow physician practices, when they're prescribing in particular, to have a lot more integration with downstream where the fulfillment happens. I can't tell you how many times you have a patient say, well, I got a prescription for this and I wanted it to go to this pharmacy, but it can't go here because not only are they not under contract, they don't have inventory. So things like whether you're under contract and inventory should be things, frankly, today with the technology we have, that should be done real time. A patient should have a pretty good idea within a few minutes if their prescription goes somewhere, or if their order or a directive from the doctor goes somewhere, what the status of that is relative to supply, physical supply, but also with respect to reimbursement, because those are the questions that come back to us. Oh, I need to change the prescription. I'd like to move it over to this pharmacy. I'd like to go to a different doctor. They're not in network. They are in network. They aren't. And so I think that technology that helps the supply chain, in essence, is, I think, extremely valuable in the patient servicing and making the experience a lot more seamless for the patient, as well as just, frankly, less headaches for the doctors, right? The phone doesn't ring as much, and that's a good thing for the practice.
Well, first, let me say thank you, Robert. I learned a lot today, not only about your journey, and also about your company, Helix VM, but also kind of about the industry and where you see the future of outpatient services going. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, just a super interview and an extraordinarily exciting company in Helix VM. And thank you, Bill, for that terrific interview. Well, we are through the first hour, and we are now moving on to the second hour. And it's just as important and as exciting. And it's going to be kicked off with our own Ansley Bowen talking to Dr. Pinky Patel from Myri. And we're going to be diving into a little bit more about what's going on in Dr. Patel's world right now in her digital health technology. Ansley.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm so happy to be able to talk to Dr. Pinky Patel, who is the CEO and founder of Myri Health. Dr. Pinky, if you could just give a quick introduction to yourself, that would be great.
Hi, Ansley. Thank you for the time and the opportunity. I'm Dr. Pinky Patel, as you mentioned, the CEO and founder of Myri Health. I'm based out of Oklahoma. And Myri Health is an AI-powered maternal health platform designed to provide personalized, proactive, and equitable pregnancy and postpartum care. A little bit of my background: I'm actually a clinical pharmacist by trade, pre- and postnatal corrective exercise specialist. I have two of my own, so I've lived the experience. I have an 8- and a 5-year-old. And I found myself advocating in rooms during my journeys and my reproductive journey in labor and delivery. And I recognized there was a lot of fragmented care. And someone who hired a doula and had access to resources, I felt like if this happens to me, what happens to other women during their labor and delivery and postpartum experiences? So just a little bit about myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. And so, as you mentioned, Myri Health is revolutionizing maternal care. It actually helps with blending AI with science. So can you share how AI is being used to help identify risks in early pregnancy, and also how it can help improve the overall outcomes for mothers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we use AI-powered risk assessments to proactively identify potential complications before they escalate. Now, our technology leverages real-time data, clinical guidelines, and predictive analytics to flag concerns and things that we can quantify, right? So gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, mental health challenges. All of these things can also eventually exacerbate or create preterm labor. Now, when we bring in predictive analytics and AI, no birth, no labor, no reproductive journey, no mother is the same. And so when we're, everything is outcomes driven, we're truly focused on customizing that care for that mother so that we can have improved outcomes. We don't just stop at identifying risk. We provide tailored interventions, whether it's evidence-based education, connecting moms to specialists, facilitating that telehealth or potentially in-person care, prompting healthcare providers to step in at the right time. But by addressing issues early and being preventative rather than reactive, we're actually helping mothers have healthier pregnancies, and by then reducing unnecessary healthcare costs.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned too, pregnancy and postpartum can both kind of be really unpredictable. So how does your platform provide that proactive health assessments? And then how do you also ensure that that information that it provides is
Yeah.
actionable for those healthcare providers that you were talking about?
Yeah, so just like I mentioned, it's not one size fits all. I found myself at this intersection of the content that I was, whether it was a Google or a book, or even now if you chat GPT something, that didn't exist when I was actually pregnant. But all of those recommendations are not very personalized. And so we are continuously learning from the mother's unique data, her symptoms, her history, her social determinants of health. We connect with different wearables, IoT devices. We actually integrate with the EHRs. And if we have that connectivity, we retrospectively can also look at that data point. And so with that, for providers for moms, let's start with that. That means they're getting timely, digestible recommendations based on their individual needs, whether it's guidance on managing swelling, identifying that that headache is not just a headache, it might be a sign for preeclampsia, because we also connect with wearables like blood pressure and blood sugar devices, warning signs for preterm labor, and when to actually seek immediate care. On the flip side, for the provider, we're bridging the communication gap by integrating with existing workflows and surfacing the most critical insights so that they can intervene efficiently. The goal is to make it more proactive, like I had mentioned, rather than reactive. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about efficiency, so AI is often seen as a tool, right, for efficiency, but how do you balance that, the technology there with also the need for personal and then also compassionate care, which is such during an important and sensitive time for mothers?
100% vulnerable, sensitive, and we're overly analyzing every aspect of our lives at that time. So AI should never replace human care. It should enhance it. Myri was designed with that in mind. We actually started a very algorithmically driven. Myri was actually an app that I designed and, my team designed, and we launched 5 years ago when I was actually delivering a baby. I don't recommend that. But, at the time we were algorithmically driven, there was no AI. And so we were very user obsessed. And I think we leveraged that experience to really understand our user experience. But then we responsibly integrated AI very recently after building that foundation. So our AI is just not delivering data. It's translating insights into supportive human-centered experiences. So we meet moms where they are, providing empathy-driven support through nudges, coaching, then access to real experts, right? So it's about making sure that the mom feels, if she's feeling anxious at 2 a.m, she has more than just an algorithm or Google or WebMD. She has guidance and reassurance and getting that trust. So the DNA of Myri was built on community. When things aren't, when you're an early stage startup, you have to be very creative. And we built a community. It's in the DNA of our company. And that community meant anonymously moms were engaging with one another. When you get mothers talking to each other anonymously, they start to feel like, okay, there's a space for me to be myself.
Yeah.
So you can bring any AI in, you can bring, any kind of gadget in, a device, but I feel like you can't replace community, and that will always be at the DNA of Myri. And so we still have a significant D2C audience and population. But again, back to the AI piece, the key is balance. AI provides precision, but we ensure care still remains deeply personal. We should empower, not replace that connection.
Absolutely. And that is so, so important to have that balance. And you still kind of remaining at your core, that care and that empathy piece, while still being able to have that efficiency as well. So that is, super important to find that balance. And kind of on the topic of finding what that perfect balance is, what has that been the most significant challenge when integrating AI into maternal health care, and how have you overcome it to actually provide better care for both the moms and the babies?
Yeah. So, I mentioned trust before, right? And so we got the trust through the community, through social media, through getting the mothers on the platform. But one of the biggest challenges is that, because when you have healthcare providers and you've got healthcare providers that want to trust, and there's also mothers themselves that you have to earn the trust from. So there's a lot of skepticism around AI and healthcare, especially in a space that is as intimate as pregnancy and postpartum. So we've tackled this by ensuring transparency. Our AI isn't a black box. We're showing mothers and providers why certain recommendations are made. Plus, we're working alongside healthcare systems, healthcare advisory boards, not against them. We're integrating seamlessly rather than disrupting workflows, because the last thing we need is healthcare providers adding an additional technology and add it to their workflow. We know that I was once a working behind in a white coat as a pharmacist. I've been in healthcare in a hospital. I understand that challenge. But another challenge is that also ensuring that AI is equitable. So we've built in safeguards to prevent that bias, making sure that our data recommendations are inclusive of all racial, socioeconomic, and geographic backgrounds.
Amazing. And again, thank you so much for your time today. But I wanted to ask you, one more question here as we are looking forward. How do you see the future of digital maternal healthcare evolving? And then what role do you feel like AI will continue to play in shaping safer and more supportive experiences for new and expecting mothers?
Yeah, no, I love that question. So the future of maternal care is going to have to be personalized. It's going to have to be predictable and accessible. Being reactive has not worked, and it's clearly showing up in our data.
Mhm.
Now, AI will continue to be a game changer, not just for risk detection, but for redefining how we're delivering that care. So we're going to start seeing a shift from an episodic care to continuous real-time support. So imagine a world where AI is detecting preterm labor risk early enough to prevent a complication, or where postpartum mental health concerns are flagged before they're becoming an actual crisis. So we're really wanting, at Myri, to push for a future where every mom, no matter where she lives, what language she speaks, what resources she has, she gets
Mhm.
care that she deserves when she really needs it.
Amazing. Well, I just want to again congratulate you for all the amazing work that you have done with Myri Health. And I hope to see continued success for you in 2025 and beyond. And thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Pinky.
Thank you.
And I am super excited for our next session today. I have the pleasure of talking to Joe Cody, who is the Associate Director of Health IT and Digital Health Policy at the American College of Cardiology. Joe, thank you so much for being with us here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Ansley?
Doing great. And I would love if you could give an introduction to our audience.
Yeah, sure. So thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to get the chance to talk about this important subject. So my name is Joe Cody. I'm the Associate Director of Health IT and Digital Health Policy for the American College of Cardiology. We are the largest cardiovascular organization in the world, representing over 50,000 cardiovascular professionals across the world. We are helping to advance science and represent our membership across the world. And I'm happy to talk about digital health and cardiology and to share my expertise with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that topic, so how does the American College of Cardiology support that integration of digital health into cardiology?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the ACC has over 50,000 members across the world, and we lead the credentialing of cardiovascular professionals in over 140 countries. And part of this is through the formation of health policy, standards, guidelines. We have our JACC journals, which are publishing clinical evidence. We have a suite of clinical data registries that are tracking information, doing post-market surveillance for cardiovascular devices and procedures. We have accreditation services, et cetera. But as we know, digital health is becoming, an integral part of how cardiology is practiced. When we look at some of the things that are being utilized now, we have AI-assisted echocardiograms and, advanced cardiac MRIs and CT scan systems. There's robotic-assisted surgeries, like percutaneous coronary interventions and the AI-guided coronary assessment. So all of these are digital tools that are being utilized by our members to help treat patients. We're working to reduce the amount of time patients have in care, shifting from inpatient to outpatient settings, hoping to reduce the amount of complications. And digital health, I think, is a really important tool as we go through this process. And as we go through this, I think we're supporting the integration of digital health in several ways. And a lot of that are through our major initiatives as the college. So promoting health equity in digital health is incredibly important to the college, ensuring that these tools are utilized in equitable ways that promote better decision-making and also better outcomes. Providing guidance at the point of care. Care transformation as we're utilizing digital tools is incredibly important in ensuring the workforce of the future is utilizing these tools in proper ways. And then finally, providing the CV team with clinical competencies to ensure they have the tools and information available to them so they can make informed decisions of what are the best digital tools to help treat patients.
Amazing. And I was going to ask you about some examples of initiatives that really help clinicians navigate digital transformation. Have you seen the implementation of these initiatives and how it's kind of really helped navigate that digital transformation for clinicians?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple things that we work on is I mentioned our JAC journals. So we have a series of journals that are published that are really constantly publishing this new data to help inform decision making and better understand digital transformation in cardiology. So, if people are up to date with a lot of those publications, you'll see all these new scientific understandings of digital health tools. But we also have an innovation program that the college has developed that helps tie together surveillance and engagement, thought leadership, and then also collaborates with industry and academic institutions to help improve cardiovascular care. We are in the process and we develop regularly practical resources to help our members and others in the cardiovascular space understand the digital tools that they're utilizing. We have an AI resource center, we have remote patient monitoring workbooks and telehealth workbooks. And I think importantly, we're regularly meeting with representatives from industry to help understand the advancements in the CV space and provide with the expertise that our membership is able to afford. So that way data used to train and build these digital health tools are properly encompassed in ways. And I think a really important aspect of what the college does and what I do in my job is also regularly being involved in advocacy efforts. So everything from reimbursement to coverage determinations, to legislation and regulatory activities that impact digital health application, how it's used in the cardiovascular space, and then also ensuring that there's safe, equitable, effective use of these digital health tools by our members to best serve the patients that they're treating.
Absolutely. And, what role does the American College of Cardiology really play in helping to set those standards or guidance for digital health tools in this cardiovascular care area?
Yeah, this is a new area for us as a college, and we don't really look to set the standards and guidance per se. We're guided by science. So we look to see where the data is drawing. Our members are incredibly dedicated towards studying the use of these tools, ensuring that there is efficacy, that they are trained equitably with data sets that represent patient populations they should be used on. And so as I mentioned, we are working on developing these best practices and workbooks to help our members and, to ensure that there's regular, consensus documents and clinical practice guidelines that can help guide the decision-making process. It's important that we're guided by data to ensure that the decisions that are made at the clinical care settings are based on information, not just hunches by members. I mentioned our JAC journals. So as we go through this process, JAC Advances, which is one of our journals, regularly is evaluating digital health tools and utilization. And we're publishing evidence that can help guide the decision-making process. And also, advocacy comes in a lot of different ways. As I mentioned, regularly meeting with industry to understand what's in development, how we may be able to provide resources to help those that are in the cutting edge and developing innovative tools to have access to information that is important for the development of these tools, to the experts that the cardiovascular teams provide and the college has access to ensure, and then also working to inform policymakers, industry, and organizations to help build the frameworks that allow us to use these tools in equitable ways. As much as we would love to think that a lot of this operates outside, we do know that policymakers have a drastic impact on the utilization of these tools. Doctors and industry need to have the proper reimbursement set in place for tools to be utilized. Otherwise, they're just going to be innovations that are fantastic science, but aren't actually utilized at the point of care. You want to ensure these tools have the data behind them to ensure that they're used properly with the right patient population. So these are all things that the college is actively involved in. And that's why I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you and to this crowd for a few minutes to talk about the role that the college has in helping to advance cardiovascular care.
Absolutely, Joan. And thank you so much for your time. I really wanted to ask you just one more question, as you mentioned how policy and advocacy is so, so important. And as a policy expert yourself, how do you see the overall impact that policy is going to have in the future of digital health and cardiovascular care?
Yeah, I think, as we look towards the future and how policy can help to impact digital health utilization in the cardiovascular space, I think we as the college are focused on a few things. One, I mentioned the equitable impact, and it's important, despite, rhetoric that is out there today, that tools are used in ways that actually are treating patients for the appropriate populations. We shouldn't shy away from these issues. In fact, we should be backed by science to show that these tools are utilized properly. We also want to ensure that AI and digital health tools are just that. They are tools. The cardiovascular professionals are the ones who should be in charge, and we don't want to have those tools usurping the patient relationship. It's so pivotal that these patients are able to talk and communicate with their care team to make a decision that's in the best interest of the patient, and that clinical care team is the one that's placed in charge of that. So as we look towards policies, these are the things that we're working on to ensure that cardiovascular professionals have access to cutting edge technologies. We don't want to stifle innovation. We want to continue to have progress in the space, but we want appropriate guardrails in place that ensure that these tools are effective and able to help treat patients that are dealing with incredibly severe, cardiovascular disorders.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Joe, as always, so much for being on our program and sharing your insights today, and telling us a little bit more about the ACC. It was a really great session with you today. If anyone's interested in connecting with Joe, learning a little bit more about the ACC as well, his LinkedIn and the organization is also, website is in the chat. Thank you so much for your time, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
Ansley Bowen, thank you for a terrific set of interviews, and really appreciate all the contributions from our speakers today and the sessions that we're holding to help bring more education to the executives around the world who are developing and evaluating and implementing and managing digital health technologies to improve patient care for all 8 billion people in the world. And next up, we have our number 2. We're wrapping it up, and we're going to be moving on to a technology company that HITLAB has recently evaluated, and we had performed a study with this group, My Physician Plan, over the last several weeks, and very impressed with the results, and looking forward to interviewing and talking to the 2 co-founders and lead executives of My Physician Plan. And so again, welcome to the program, Gaurav and Ramdev.
Thank you for the opportunity, Stan.
All right. So again, welcome you guys. And again, congratulations on developing such an impressive platform. I know you've been working on it and have been diligently optimizing it, and you are revenue positive. You are having, patients are flowing through the platform today. So it is early commercial. Let's start with just the basics. What inspired you to create My Physician Plan, and how do you think your approach can help address a lot of the challenges that we're seeing in the US healthcare system?
So when I was involved with primary care practice, we noticed patients coming in without insurance, and then they would say, how much is the fees? You say $150, $200, $250. Then they negotiate. Then you bring it down, and then you want to do some testing. They say, no, I don't have money. How much it costs? So you do some tests. You don't, and then you want them to come back for a follow-up. And again, that's how much is the fees, same amount, you can't do it. So there's a lot of disconnect. So what we noticed is we have people in our community who have healthcare, who have access to primary care and get the care done. And then we have folks, our neighbors and other people who don't have care, and then they're kind of bouncing around between emergency rooms or urgent cares or doctors. So we said, fine, this is not fair. We got to do something about it. So we came up with a primary care plan. We said the goal was to bring them at par with everyone else with insurance. So when it comes to primary care, everyone should have the same access, and it should not be that expensive. So the primary care plan helped us to bring these people at par with the rest of the patient population in the community. So we can provide the same type of care that we can with anyone who has insurance. So that was the idea, and that helped out. And when that got introduced at a facility, primary care facility, what we started seeing was not only the people in the community were using it, but people from, this is in New Jersey, people from Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York were coming in because they were saying, hey, this facility has a plan that incorporates the doctor's office, labs, prescriptions. So they were taking advantage of it. So that inspired us to do it. And then I ran into Gigi at Wharton. I said, look, here's what I'm doing. Here's what's going on. Can we do something so we can expand and then offer it, nationwide? So that's how we ended up launching My Physician Plan.
Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And so talk about how this is different than traditional insurance models that we see across the United States.
So when Ramdev introduced to me this concept about 4 years ago, his key pivot was that and that is what we ended up doing, is that by removing all the process and red tape, which in a way has now come in between in providing primary care. So before even the patient sees the doctor, there is like 10 processes which the practice has to do, so that makes sure that they get paid for the actual visit. And patients are also losing access simply because they are not able to qualify for all of these plans out there. So the number one thing that we went out doing is that we try to remove as much red tape as possible. So patients are able to sign up with us with no restrictions. Doesn't matter what your legal status is, doesn't matter if you have a job, doesn't matter what your age group is. Without any preconditions, anyone and everyone can sign up. And it's a simple 2-minute process. You go online, you sign up in 2 minutes, and you're ready. You can see a provider. We did the same thing on the provider side as well. So we have real-time tracking. Any time a patient walks in at the front desk itself, they can quickly verify that the member is eligible. They are with the plan, and see the patient. They don't have to worry about CPT coding as long as a patient makes the effort to go and see the provider, and the provider is able to see it. As long as that is qualified, they get paid for that visit, and almost always within 24 hours. So by removing all that process, we were actually cutting so much red tape that when initially Ramdev ran the numbers, he was like, this is all it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us like $70 a month. And I was like, that is very cheap, and it makes it extremely affordable to a lot of people in the United States, especially 30 million people almost without insurance. And also a lot of those with high deductibles who are not able to make their primary care visits because it's super expensive. So once I ran the number, and also with my experience both on Wall Street as well as other startups, I knew like end to end what it takes to be compliant, what it takes to launch a product, what does it take to work with insurance, what does it take to work with patients. I was like, this can be done, and we can absolutely make it like much more affordable and accessible for everyone. And then it was more like, why are we not doing it?
Just to add to that, Stan, so if you see the significant difference between the traditional versus what we're trying to do, we have 2 types of products, right? One is the primary care plan that anyone can use and sign up, no restrictions, nothing doing. You can sign up today, you can see the doctor tomorrow. You can have it for a month, 2 months, whatever it is. And then you have the comprehensive care plan also. If you say, no, whatever specialists, hospitals and whatnot. So we have other products that they can use too. If you compare traditional versus what we are trying to offer, whether it's comprehensive care or primary care, even if you look at comprehensive care, premiums are 30 to 50% lower than what they're paying. So it's really appealing to small businesses also, to the employees. If the premiums are really high, they're saying, okay, this is an alternate model that I can use. And then when it comes to the deductibles, most of the plans have $5,000 deductible, and then there's $10,000 for the family. And then with this, again, the deductibles are $500, $1,500, depending on what they're choosing. So the out-of-pocket cost for the members is really low, whether it's primary care or whether it's comprehensive care, compared to the traditional models. So just like Gaurav said, the red tape is out, both for the members and the providers. Premiums are affordable. And then there's no deductible, the fear of deductibles. If you have traditional plan, if you go back to the doctor says, come back for a follow-up. Traditional plan says, okay, annual physical is covered. And then what if the doctors order some tests and those are not covered? And then if you want to come for a follow-up for the rest of the year, you have to pay out of pocket for those. So that's all taken out. The patients know that they have to pay only the copay when they go to the doctors, or when they go to other care providers, they're only paying a minimum deductible that they know that they're supposed to. So that helps the patients or employers or employees to choose this as an alternate option versus what they have.
Amazing. And so a little bit more to double click on that. One of the things that we're really struggling with in the United States right now is trying to ensure that patients have access to preventative care as well. And not just, sick care, but really trying to stay healthy care. And so how do you ensure that your members are able to access these kinds of preventative care and regular doctor visits without any kind of significant financial risk and significant financial cost that, usually, and time too, right? I mean, one of the beautiful things is that you're synchronous and asynchronous. And so you have this ability to save people the time they have to travel to and from the office, and then the time that they have to sit in the office. But how do you help patients mitigate those risks and the financial burdens that come with those?
So just like I said before, when it comes to traditional plans, what we have seen, other than the final physical exam, everything comes out of patient's pocket, right? So when you want them to come next time for a follow-up, they have to pay out of pocket for any of those visits. So when it comes to preventive care or primary care, there's no point just providing a physical exam and then say off you go, and then we don't see you for the next of the rest of the year because they have to pay out of pocket. So now with this plan, what we are encouraging, and in fact we send emails, we send notifications saying, please, physical is out of pocket, is free. There's no free. I mean, the physical exam is free. There's no out of pocket fees. There's no out of pocket fees for the test. So please go visit. So by doing so, and when the patients know the only amount that's coming out of their pocket is a $30 copay or $24 copay, the complaints in terms of follow-up care, in terms of whether it's a chronic condition, visiting the doctors, or having the option for a televisit, because of all that, they're able to follow through. But compare that with the traditional options. If you talk to the primary care doctors, can I skip the 3-month visit? If you're a diabetic patient, can I come in 6 months because again I have to pay out of pocket? Can you reduce my test because I have to pay out of pocket? So those kind of things come in with the traditional plans, but that's not there with us. So that encourages the primary care part.
And because we cut so much red tape, both with even with the partners that we have, other providers like labs and prescriptions, we in a lot of cases actually have a lower out of pocket than even co-pays that traditional insurance plans have. So we have actually, even in that angle, we have reduced the price point much lower. Like most chronic visits, even for lab tests, they're probably paying like $10 to $15 in lab fees, which versus even traditional plans will apply completely towards a deductible, and you're still paying like $60 or whatever, maybe sometimes even higher, like $200 just to get the lab test done. So we are cutting down the cost across the board, and our overall focus is that by reducing the cost tremendously and making it accessible and affordable to everyone, we can make it possible for everyone to get this care.
Which is huge, because right now we're seeing that is really needed. So, just to wrap up with a couple more quick questions here over the next few minutes, I think we would love to hear what your future vision is for My Physician Plan and how you see it growing over the next few years, and some of the technological improvements, whether it's AI or something else that you're planning on rolling out to help this technology platform, really revolutionary technology platform, scale over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
So that's a great question. Yeah, go ahead, Gaurav.
Yes, a couple of things we're doing already. So one is that we did realize also, and thanks to the work that you guys did, that healthcare is complex, and it does look like in some cases patients are still getting confounded, though we try to simplify it and make it very easy. That we did realize that, so we are building on an AI component to help people navigate their healthcare better. That is also happening, but we are also talking with other healthcare players right now. So we are looking to see if we can, now that we have a large network of doctors in almost all the states in the United States, especially primary care. So we are looking to see if we can somehow integrate our offering with more larger health plans out there, to have more ACA compliant plans, which are more appealing to small businesses and employers. But we are working on both the directions to make sure that the benefits that we're able to bring in, we're able to help not just the population that we're targeting, but across the board to every American out there should be able to get, not just American, like anyone in the United States, be it whether you are here legally, illegally, or traveling, you should be able to access our healthcare services at an affordable and accessible price. So that is the vision that we're going for. And fingers crossed we will get there, and we're getting good traction from the market. So that's obviously very helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And tell us a little bit more about AI and how you see AI, as we've seen AI really start to become pervasive in every technological platform that we've studied over the last year now. How is AI going to help your platform scale and improve patient services over the next 3 years?
So to keep the cost low, and then also make it easy for anyone who's coming to the platform understand, We can't have a person answering the phone. We have some people answering the phone calls all the time. We have someone chatting. So that's again is going to add a lot of cost to us. And then we're really not answering and then giving everything that they need. So we are working on introducing the AI piece very soon. I mean, it's in staging at this point, but it'll go live. So that will really help out anyone who's coming to the platform in understanding various questions, or to the doctors who need additional support. I think that's going to revolutionize. And then we are also going to probably add some more intelligence into it, where if they have some common questions about their health conditions, also they should be able to get some answers too. So I think this is going to help us reduce the cost and also expand further.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for your time today. Really appreciate everything that you've been able to bring to the program, and congratulations again on developing such a revolutionary platform for patients to gain access to physicians and medical consultations that they just haven't had access to before. Well done. Thank you both.
Thank you, Stan. Thanks for the opportunity.
Incredible platform, incredible team. And again, we're very lucky to have them come on today and share their journey and share their stories of what they're doing and how they're, again, looking at how patient care can be improved through digital platforms, not only in terms of the clinical outcomes, but also in terms of the accessibility and, at the end of the day, the affordability, which is so important. And next up, we are going to be talking about how wearables are being leveraged to improve heart health and interventional research and improving observational data. And our own Jerry Antimano is going to be interviewing a senior scientific executive from Gilead, one of the world's leading pharmaceutical manufacturers, who also focus a lot on research and are doing some extraordinarily innovative things in digital health and digital technologies for research. So on that note, handing it over to Jerry. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, cheers, Dan. Thanks so much for introducing us. Really great to be on today's symposium, our second one of 2025, and it's a pleasure to invite Anisha Suri from Gilead to talk to us a little bit more about leveraging those wearables in the clinical studies that are so important in enhancing the research that's being done by an organization like Gilead in the ecosystem. But Anisha, I know you're a newcomer to the speaking part of the program. It's great to have you on. We'd love to hear more about your background and what you're currently doing at Gilead.
Thanks, Jerry, and team for organizing the symposium and for having me. I'm a data scientist in the AI Research Center of Excellence at Gilead. And I support a lot of clinical operation studies in developing feasibility analytics of the clinical studies and selecting investigators, countries when the trials are being conducted, and developing a lot of algorithms in the backend to support those decision making. Besides that, I have background in wearable sensors and devices through my research. And although it's not as prevalent in Gilead per se, but the pharma is catching up with all the regulatory, as you're already aware, with the devices, the AI, the other tech. So very interested in the topic of real world evidence and topics related to digital health.
No, that's brilliant. And if we can dive right into it, Anisha, I think we'd love to hear more about the parameters that are currently being measured through wearables in clinical studies at the moment, and how are they being monitored?
Yeah, absolutely. So more commonly, the wearables we are seeing widely used in observational studies, not so much in interventional per se. Even in interventional studies, you would see them being used as like secondary or exploratory endpoints, but we are a bit far from using them as like primary endpoint substitution. But they're used for rehabilitation, treatment monitoring, or even prognosis of diseases. And like aspects like quality of life, which are usually self-reported measures and are prone to like recall bias or like individual perceptions, these variables are actually giving us parameters to quantify essentially those parameters, right? And it not to replace the human perceptions. Those are really important pieces. We need to acknowledge like what we perceive, but to augment that with actually quantifiable data. Like that's the power of variables, right? So basically these will be bucketed into measures that are quantifying the intensity, the frequency, and or the duration of an event. So if you consider a thing like physical activity, how long you are spending time in vigorous activities, light activities, or how they are related to your quality of life or your cognitive health, your the nutrition that you're consuming, or all those things, or how many steps you are taking. Again, like that's like a frequency, right? And how intense is the workout or whatever other aspects that are done. So not just physical activity, your gait can be quantified now, like you're walking, your walking patterns. There is a pattern that you can get insights on the variability in patterns. Maybe like these are early biomarkers for diseases like dementia or so there are like lots of interesting research. And on that note, even sleep can get monitored, right? And you can actually uh, see the quality of your sleeps. I mean, a lot of devices are there right now which people are using. In sports medicine, particularly, muscle fatigue is pretty importantly tracked, and that's something, some devices are upcoming on that end. Then besides that, you have like your heart rate getting monitored, even outcomes like the falls, which are very common in older adults. Like how can you track them? And most often they have they will fall, or if they need help, like and those then that's when like those trigger systems can help and monitor, record the actual number of falls that they experience. Or even outcomes like in respiratory or infectious diseases, like the coughing, or if, and especially if you're having these diseases or viruses related studies being done in younger population who cannot really remember like how their sleep was, or uh, so really like all these different measures of the possibilities are immense. um, and specifically in neurological conditions like Parkinson's disease, where the gait signals are very prominently measured. So, or physical therapy, where you are monitoring the recovery of your walking. And yeah, I think these are important use cases. And from head to toe, you can put the sensor at anywhere these days, right? Like you have headbands, you have even glasses, or wrist sensors are the most common ones, which everybody has like a digital device. There are more digital devices than the number of humans, I think, at this point. And then people are using rings, and a lot of these devices or algorithms are even like regulatory approved or getting approval after like rigorous validations. So yeah, it's an exciting time, like I guess, for wearables.
No, that's great. Just to sort of stay on the topic, like from your perspective, like have you seen any sort of parameters or metrics that wearables are that you've seen that are being measured that are either being over measured, or is there any like specific maybe parameters or metrics that like need more attention you feel from the wearable space?
I think so right now the most commonly measured outcome is like the time spent in moderate vigorous physical activity. That's and like your steps, which I think the earliest research goes back to like late 1990s on this topic. So at this point, at least, that's like an established measure. But even so, that's not as commonly seen in the wearables. So I think we are very far away from seeing the use of wearables in uh, like in the interventional studies at the moment. But that's where the point of how meaningful is it, or how it's actually needed or not in a study, or are we that balance between, are we increasing the patient burden, or are we trying to reduce it? Because the intention is to reduce the burden, but are they having to like maybe even as simple thing as like they have to charge it like very often or keep track of it. So is this like, so that kind of balance is really the key here. I think we're getting there, but again, like more research and is needed around this space, and like the open-mindedness of adopting and uh, really using these devices in the time, especially like with the age group like ours, or like, you know, which are already in the digital space. Increasingly, the trials will be using the devices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, there's a lot of usage now, you know, in everyday life almost, with AI and chatbot technology enhancing all the ways that we're currently doing work. Is there any sort of like insights that have been derived from wearable data using this current sort of AI and chatbot technology in clinical research that you've seen from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So the amount of data that is generated from variables is vast, and the human analysis can easily miss the patterns in the diseases and the progression. So these AI algorithms, they can process vast amount of the data and help us generate like accurate or comprehensive insights into the patient health, and help in finding like patterns or triggers, or uh, indicate like, you know, where the meaning like clinically meaningful change in a person's physical behavior, or anything is happening, and then that can trigger attention to the participant, and uh, in the trial, or the patient and the healthcare provider. So in way it can increase the engagement between the patients and the providers, and it can help them to stay like, you know, adherent to the treatment. Like if they're prescribed something maybe related to physical activity, or any other you know, issue, like you can actually engage in that way, especially for managing chronic conditions. I think this is like real-time monitoring and creating alerts based system, and people who don't have control over it, like imagine like an older person living by themselves, they fall down like, uh, and a trigger is immediately sent to the nearest you know, center, or even to their loved ones to know what's happening. So I think that's where we are getting at, right? And the help, like the help is immediately received. So, and that's possible by analyzing the data, you know, in using all the technology that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's a time saver already, and then I think in a situation like that, I think it, you know, saving any type of time is going to be valuable in responding to situations like that and stuff. So that's you're absolutely right on that. And we've spoken a bit about sort of measuring these different parameters through wearables, and then taking AI chatbot tech to sort of analyze and gain insights from that. What have you seen as sort of the main challenges for implementation, you know, with wearables and gaining insights and data from those wearables, and considerations actually when integrating the wearables and devices into the clinical studies you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important consideration is to establish the context of use and the intended population and meaningfulness, right? We don't want to use a technology for the sake of it. Like, is it adding value? Is it reducing the patient and even the clinical site burden, or is it going to increase it, right? So that balance of and is it absolutely needed? Is it augmenting my results, or is it just like a good to have, or is it a must need, or is it replacing something? So that establishing the context of use is important. As for the implementation, of course, data can grow exponentially when you're capturing from these devices. So we have to be mindful, like how long do you want to capture it? Are you capturing it only during the daytime? Are you, depending on your clinical study, right? And then the infrastructure support is so important, especially if it's a global study. Like it's within US, you can still, manage, like maybe you want to use the same device for everybody. So you are going to ship them, get it back, basic logistics. Or you're trying to go for like a bring your own device, but then you have to establish that standard, because each of these devices, like if you count the steps using an Apple Watch versus a Fitbit versus some other device, the numbers are going to be slightly different just because of the layers of the algorithms that are. So are you going to come up with like a metric, like there is a 6-minute walking test, which is an established, test which people use. Is so what kind of standards are already existing? Can we like leverage that, integrate it with the technology and improve it? That's important. And then device errors. This is technology. Batteries can die down. Or you're expecting the patient to charge the device. These are like so common issues. Or even the wristband causing skin irritations to some people, right? uh, so again, like usability, user acceptance, and all these other are some challenges and considerations which should be looked into, right? Or and But on that, do want to say like the positives. I don't want to discourage people to not use the devices. So to be able to establish the like how do we differentiate that the reason for maybe like the failure of the trial was a drug versus a digital device, right? Like that's something to think about. Like, did your trial fail because you put a digital device into it, or was it actually the drug? So that's not something we have been able to. Uh, I think the pharma or healthcare in general is trying to understand better. So yeah, like that's my perspective.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. There's a lot of outside sort of factors to consider, especially with the errors that you get from the technology that you're trying to capture the data from. I often find that I feel like I've walked more steps than my Fitbit is telling me, and you're right. You can't change you can't control the human behavior of making sure we charge our devices to make sure we're getting accurate readings and stuff. I would
Exactly. And yeah, no, I just wanted to say one last thing, that's why it's so important to lean on the regulatory guidances from the FDAs or the EMAs and these other organizations to really lean into and support, because if they are being rigorous on establishing accuracy, reliability, validity, then uh, we have to work together uh, to make this happen with wearables.
Mhm, mhm. No, absolutely. Totally agree. I would encourage everybody in the chat to connect with Anisha and all the other amazing speakers we've had in the first half of the symposium today. You'll find Anisha's details in the chat. So Anisha, expect a flurry of LinkedIn requests this afternoon, probably from everybody that wants to continue the conversation with you. And if you want to, of course, find out more about the work that Gilead is doing, the information is there as well. So Anisha, thanks so much for your time. I know you're super busy with all the work you're doing in the AI Research Center of Excellence at Gilead, and we'd love to have you back on the program to tell us how everything's going for sure.
Thanks, Jerry and team, for putting this fantastic symposium together, and happy to be here and share some stuff.
No, thanks so much, Anisha. Take care.
Right.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So just before we move on to our next speaker of our symposium, we do have another chance to win a one-year Breakthrough General Fellowship for our exclusive initiative to access some of the more exclusive chats and continue some of the conversations that we're having on the symposia at the summit in a more intimate setting, where you actually get to meet some of the speakers during an hour-long, 2-hour-long virtual presentations and open discussions that they hold on a weekly basis. And the cohort that we have, the fellowship has had some great benefits and has gotten some great insights, continuing some of the conversations that we've had at the symposium. So do check out the chat, enter the code word AI on the link that Sammy, Ansley and the team have put in the chat. And we'll keep it up for just a few more seconds and you could be in with a chance to win a year's free membership to access those amazing benefits, exclusive insights, and further learnings, of course, from our esteemed speakers that we have on the program. So we're on to our third hour of the second symposium for 2025. And it's wonderful to be able to welcome Abhishek Pandey, who is leading machine learning at AbbVie. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing at AbbVie.
Yeah, so I lead the machine learning team here in AbbVie. So my team is essentially one centralized team for, you can call all of AbbVie. We are focusing on AI-based drug discovery. And now AI-based drug discovery can be small molecule or large molecule. We have people doing on both sides of the aisle. Also, normally drug discovery can be divided into three different pillars, right? You have the target, you have the molecule, and then you have the patient. We have people working on all three different pillars as well, if you say about it. So that's what my team does in AbbVie, and happy to be here.
Yeah, no, super important work. Making sure that you're putting the right research into making sure we're getting the appropriate medication and improving that medication, of course. But today's conference or the digital symposium is all around talking more around how AI is impacting the search for cures and drug discovery. And we'd love to get your perspective of how you're seeing AI transforming that drug discovery process, maybe in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, and what sort of advancements are currently happening that's reshaping the industry, which I'm sure there's not a shortage of.
Well, first of all, to improve any problem, you have to agree there is a problem. So there is a very acute problem that drug discovery industry actually faces. So just to tell this, I was one of the founding machine learning scientists at Tempus AI, which is now called. I do not exactly belong to the chemistry side of things or biology side of things. I mostly belong to more of machine learning side of things, which essentially is what brought me into this. Is the problem of drug discovery is very fascinating. It's probably one of the most challenging problems that I have ever seen in my life. Drug discovery, if you talk about business problem, it's very costly. It's like $3 to $4 billion a single drug to market. It's very time taking. It's around like 16 years for a single drug to come to market. And then at the same time, actually, it's not so successful as well. Only 1 in 10 make it from phase 1 to actual drug. Mm-hmm. So the potential of AI is to actually impact all three different pillars: speed, cost, and de-risking the process and making it more successful as well. Now, let's just say that's the future. The immediate impact of machine learning or AI in drug discovery, which you guys must be experiencing. If you're not, you should work for it for sure, because there is a lot of advantage of it. Is, for example, like property predictions. Designing a molecule which essentially should have all the right properties is a very important task, actually. And AI, given that there is a lot of data available out there, also you should have some internal data internally as well. There are really good ways you can actually make models that can predict properties and make it like really, really impactful when designing the molecule, because you won't like to design a molecule which will have not the good amount of clearance or anything like that. So I think de novo design of molecules, can machine learning, so this same property predictor, can you put it inside a generative model and say that I would design a molecule with only the right properties from the get-go? All of these are reality. This is not science fiction anymore. This is all that people are doing. We are doing, and I'm pretty sure everybody else should be doing if they're not already doing. Now, there is a common critique to AI-based drug discovery, is that But there is no drug that has come out from AI yet. I just told you it takes around 15, 16 years for a drug to come to market. When was the first time when deep learning came into existence? 2011, 12, around that. That's the Nobel Prize that people got this time, right? So it's going to take some time actually, and the drug discovery or ML, AI ML in drug discovery world is even more newer. It's like story of last 4 or 5 years, probably not more older than that actually. So there are drugs in clinical phase, early phase, late phase, all of that, but definitely I'm pretty sure some of them will come out as well.
Yeah, you bring out some really excellent points, and one of them being, how long it takes, of course, in terms of the process of the discovery and also the development, and of course AI has the potential to drastically speed that up. But how can the technology help to reduce the time and cost associated with bringing these new cures and medications to the market?
Yeah. So for that, you have to go into how drug discovery was done till now. So most of it was pretty lab-based, pretty wet lab-based, and pretty manual, in the sense that a biologist in the academic lab actually did a research where they tested out on mouse or whatnot, whatever their organism may be, that a particular gene is correlated to a particular disease, and that's what they take it as their target. So that's the starting of your drug discovery, that you have identified a target that will alter the course of disease. This process can be made into an AI process. Actually, there are AI algorithms that can come up with targets. The AI first companies are actually using that as a method to actually come up with new targets. But if you choose the old method, which is still, as I said, is a traditional method or a manual method where you read all the papers and then essentially decide which of these targets are the most prominent one. In a very similarish way, then once the target is decided, there are people who will identify the pockets, and then how many pockets exist, what's the size of pockets and stuff like that. And then they'll try to fit in a molecule into that pocket. It's very much like a Lego block puzzle, actually. And then the molecule should have all the right properties. So the chemist knows which part of the molecule has what kind of properties and stuff like that. And they'll keep experimenting in an iterative process in wet lab to get to that process. But there are algorithms that can come up with molecules, as I just described some time back, which essentially will have all the right properties from the get-go. So the idea is that the DMTA cycle, design, make, test, and analyze, you can actually just change this potentially into design, test, analyze in a feedback loop, and then you make at the very end, which is when it goes to a wet lab. That's the true place where we should be going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sticking with your point to looking at things at a molecular level, what's sort of AI's ability to analyze sort of larger data sets and getting us a better, improved understanding of diseases, especially at that molecular level, and how that leads to more effective treatments?
Yeah, this is actually a very good question. In general, for multiple reasons. There is a very funny thing to it as well, which is most of the blockbuster drug has been discovered by accident. And if not by accident, the indication that they are most sold for is accident. So the reason for it is that we do not exactly understand the potential mechanism of action for a lot of the molecules that exist out there as drug. There is an inherent process that is wrong with that we have not been able to fix, which is we live in a paradigm of one target, one molecule, one disease. No disease is that simple, that you just choose one single gene, you make a molecule out of it, and then you'll be able to cure the disease. It's not that simple. That's the reason why we throw a kitchen sink to cancer. We try a combination therapies and stuff like that, along with immunotherapy and whatever drug is there in market. So I think the true science has to progress there, of course. We have to get from one target, one molecule, one disease to multi relationship between multiple targets, multiple molecules all coming together. But before that, actually, what we can do is design, take these large data sets that we have access, or we can generate at very high throughput. One of the best example of it is maybe like what Chan Zuckerberg Foundation is doing, which is designing virtual cells where we can do experiment in a digital sense. And that could be a surrogate to actually doing some of the wet lab experiments that we are doing. The good thing about this is that once a molecule has been designed, you can test them out on those virtual cell, virtual tissues leading to virtual human, that essentially you will be able to say that molecule has yet not been made. There is no money invested till now in terms of wet lab experimentation. And you can right now say that this particular molecule is going to work on a patient with this kind of biomarker happening in that. We are not there yet, but we have to get there yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Abhishek, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us and the great work that you're doing with AbbVie. Super important work to make sure that we're using technology to be able to speed up the way that drug discovery is going, and that we're making sure that we're having some real focus in the way that these medications are being put out to treat the population. But thanks so much for coming on, Abhishek. I wish we had more time to talk with you, but I'm sure some of the folks on the audience today will reach out to you and hopefully continue this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. So just a really great insight as to how technology and pharma are working hand in hand to make sure that we are improving the effectiveness and the treatment of the medications and drugs that are being manufactured now. Before we move on to our next speaker, who I'm sure a lot of you folks who tune into the HITLAB Symposium programs may be familiar with, I do want to let everybody know about the first HITLAB Breakthrough Alliance Europe conference that's happening in Paris, April 1st and 2nd. It is applied to attend. It is a limited capacity event, but it being our first foray into Europe officially, it'll be held at a great location at one of the oldest hospitals in Europe, at the Hotel Dieu, right next to the Cathedral of Notre Dame, which is, of course, as you know, just been refurbished and is now accepting visitors. So super exciting. If you happen to be in Paris, or you want to take a trip to Paris and meet Laurent, Stan, and some amazing startups that are scaling across Europe, please do go to the landing page and check the information out and apply to attend if you'd like to participate or attend the program. Now into the last 45 minutes of today's symposium, I have the pleasure of welcoming back a familiar face to the HITLAB program, Juan Jimenez, who has been doing a lot of work with HITLAB and his company AcuCardia, who I think started working with a good 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's wonderful to have you back in the program, Juan. And those who aren't familiar with either yourself or AcuCardia, would love to hear a bit of background about yourself and also an update for those who are familiar with you.
Sure. Thank you, Jerry and HITLAB, for the invitation. We have been collaborating with HITLAB for the last 3 years, so it has been a long time, an exciting opportunity to learn more about the overall HITLAB organization. But as you mentioned, I'm Juan Jimenez, co-founder and CEO of AcuCardia, and in AcuCardia we are leveraging the humble and ubiquitous ECG as a more powerful diagnostic tool and broad biomarker to improve patient outcomes and save lives globally, first in the US and hopefully soon beyond the US. As a company, we are commercial stage with our first product, which is AcuECG, which is a software as a medical device class 2, which is a device agnostic software platform for the analysis of ECGs coming from Holters, extended Holters, and mobile cardiac telemetry. We call that our flagship product. And beyond that, we are leveraging ECG as a broad biomarker, and we have launched two software tools. One is AKBS, using electrocardiogram data for screening, detection, prediction, and management of the disease of aortic stenosis, which is a disease quite lethal and difficult to diagnose currently. And that particular product received FDA breakthrough device designation late 2024. And more recently, we announced our FDA breakthrough designation and acceptance into the FDA TAP program for our AKGuard product, which is our tool to monitor for hyperkalemia in ESRD and CKD population using lead-1 data from the ECG. The tool is to better manage chronic kidney disease and end-stage renal disease using lead-1 ECG data currently with clinical devices, but hopefully soon we can expand the validation to do the same from consumer-grade devices like the Apple Watch, Samsung Watch, Fitbit, etc. We are excited to be here, and again, thank you, Jerry, for having me.
No, it's really wonderful to see the growth you guys have gone through over the last couple of years, Juan, and really thrilled that we as HITLAB have been able to play at least a small part in your growth and your development. And I think it's appropriate for being Heart Health Month to also have you on the program as well. And of course, it being Valentine's Day, what better to have a solution on to talk about heart health. But ECGs are new, of course. It's been a mainstay in cardiology and medicine for decades now.
Actually, more than 100 years.
Right, exactly. And we're talking about ECG now being the next, or you want to talk about the ECG being the next big biomarker in cardiology. So sort of now, what makes them, or what are you seeing that makes them uniquely positioned to become that next big biomarker in healthcare?
I think we are living a positive perfect storm that enable us to use that ECG to make it the next big biomarker. And to make this happen, there's a combination of factors. One is the availability and economic use of compute capacity. Compute power, every day becoming cheaper and more readily available. Second, ECG devices every day are more convenient and easier to use. And the ECG sensors has been embedded into everything from clinical grade devices to consumer devices like the watch, and there are even biofabrics now embedding ECG sensors into it. And third is the advancement in artificial intelligence that we have seen over the last 50 years, but in particular the last 4 or 5 years, which is making possible to us now to see within the ECG the hidden signals that couldn't be seen by a plain eye by a physician or clinician. We are able to see hidden signals in such information, be able to detect earlier certain diseases in cardiology and beyond. So we are not saying that. I want to share in the chat later in this conversation a paper published by a team of researchers from Mass General in Boston about they were able to identify correlations in ECG for more than 600 disease types. So not just traditional rhythm-associated disorders, but also structural heart, cardiometabolic, and even respiratory diseases. We are not saying that AcuCardia invented the term ECG as a biomarker. We are embracing that. And we believe AcuCardia is positioned to become the vehicle to take research into reality, and that's what we are doing. Using research currently that we have done, but also we are open, hopefully in the future, to collaborate with great minds around the globe to be able to use the AcuCardia vehicle to bring to market technology in the ECG space.
No, that's wonderful. And as you know, HITLAB is a great advocate for really improving research and how it's being done now. And it'd be great if using ECGs along with Accucardia can really help improve that. Beyond sort of detecting sort of heart rhythm issues, where from your standpoint do you see sort of the most exciting potential for this ECG data to reveal even more broader sort of health insights and especially early indicators for other conditions that may be out there too?
So I'd like to mention three different use cases. The first two currently being developed by Accucardia, but I will also mention other areas being worked by other people in the field. First, aortic stenosis is a structural heart disease that currently is the current standard of care is difficult to detect severe state of the disease. Up to 50% of patients are found post-mortem after they pass away to having found the disease. Currently, the gold standard for detection of that disease is echocardiography. There are a limited number of echocardiogram exams done in the US. The primary gatekeeper for an echocardiography test is the cardiologist. And there are around 50% of counties in America that do not have a practice in cardiology. So if you have, as a gatekeeper, to prescribe an echocardiogram is to have access to a cardiologist, we can do the math and see why is that difficult to have access to that particular test. But ECGs, electrocardiograms, are widely available in primary care, emergency departments, family medicine, up to cardiology. There are more than 100 million ECGs performed in America per year. If we are able to leverage the ECG data to be able to screen before the severity of the aortic stenosis condition causes the big symptoms, and sometimes even the disease is asymptomatic, we can gonna be able to improve the detection, referral to therapy, and increase the quality of life and lifespans of patients experiencing such disease. You can go to our website and look at our latest research in the space, and we're looking forward to publish more in the upcoming months about our capability for not just detection, screening, and management of disease. And in the case of hyperkalemia, 14-17% of patients with CKD suffer from hyperkalemia, and up to 40% in patients with end-stage renal disease pass away because of hyperkalemia episodes. If you're able to better manage that population using an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch or a clinical grade device with a lead 1 ECG capability, we're able to improve outcomes, better manage that population, and improve the quality of life. So I know there are also recent announcements. There are products in the market using ECGs for heart failure detection, using ECG for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, among many others. We are not the only ones in the space, but we are the only ones focused on making the ECG the use of ECG as widely available as we intend to do so, using it as a broad biomarker.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think that that really just highlights the broad sort of insights that you can really gather from the data that's being gathered. You talked earlier about sort of ECGs and ECG collection and data being more broadly sort of available and readily available, especially to the consumer and stuff. But of course, cardiovascular disease is a condition that knows no boundaries, which in some ways can make it even more lethal than any other diseases out there. But how are you guys at Accucardia ensuring that the ECG solutions are able to be accessed and also most importantly impactful across the diverse, the underserved, and also some of the more rural populations worldwide?
Yeah, first of all our technologies that we have developed are what we call device agnostic. We do believe that we shouldn't tie our capabilities to one device type, and I believe having a broad accessibility is essential. Second is the ease of integration, not only relying on one particular workflow, either via an API, embedded in the EHR, or embedded with the device ecosystem. I think that flexibility enables that. Finally, is about the diversity in clinical validation to make sure the results and there is no demographic and bias regarding information. The clinical validation has to welcome the demographic as well and diversity aspect. And finally, the only way to bring world-class diagnostic test at scale is with technology. It will be right now. There's a significant shortage, as I said earlier. Nearly 50% of counties in America do not have a practicing cardiologist. In many developing countries, the issue is the same, and in other developed countries as well. So it is impossible, given the increasing prevalence of cardiovascular, cardiometabolic diseases, to have access to specialized medicine. We need to bring world-class diagnostic capability to primary care, so the primary physician could do more with the information they have at hand, and based on that information, better refer to treatment based on earlier insights. And I believe ECG is one of the cheapest diagnostic tool available at hand to clinicians, and to make that information available could help improve outcomes across the globe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Juan. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, Juan. Thanks so much for sharing your insights and also your updates as to how you're doing with AccuCardia. It's really exciting to see where you guys have come from and grown. And I really implore everybody in the audience to check out the AccuCardia website. And also connect with Juan to hear more about the amazing work that they're doing. And of course, Juan, I know you said you're going to put a paper link in the chat, link to a paper in the chat that you guys recently did as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Juan. So just before we enter the last half hour with our final speakers, and before I hand it back to Stan, I do want to let everybody know about the New York Health Innovation Week and the HITLAB Innovator Summit, which is going to be the linchpin event May 6 to 8. So that first full week of May, please do join us. It is a ticketed event. There's more information in the chat. If you want to see and meet some of the amazing startups that we've had on today, like AccuCardia and Helix VM, or connect with some of the fantastic speakers like Laurent and Bill Taranto, they'll be there at the summit in May at the New York Times Microsoft Tech Center. So please do check that out. And if you are looking to either attend or sponsor the event, we are still looking for sponsors to support that event. So please do either reach out to me via LinkedIn or fill out a form on the website. But Stan, back to you to take us home.
No, that's fantastic. Great set of interviews. Thank you, Jerry, for putting us together, and just an amazing set of interviews on what some of the latest technologies are in heart health and how they're being utilized in clinical trials and clinical technologies studies around the world. And so super wonderful to see that. And so we are in the last half hour of hour number 3 of the second symposium of the year, the February symposium around heart health. And talking about heart health, if we don't have really good lab management systems in the labs during the development process, during the research process, then we don't have really good heart health. And this is what the next person who's going to talk to us today is passionate about, and about bringing these sorts of technologies to everyday research efforts around the country and around the world. Please welcome Unica Alexander from the Proficient Lab. Unica, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Can you see me?
I cannot see you, and I'm sure we'll fix that in a moment, or if we can just remove her background, perhaps that'll help a little bit. But otherwise, we'll go off camera and we'll just do an interview with no video. But if you could, again, just give everyone a little bit of background on yourself and your company.
So hi to everyone who's been here today. I think these talks have been amazing. My background is specifically in laboratory medicine. I've spent a lot of time in fertility medicine in terms of just my field of work. However, what I found is that we have quite a bit of gaps in terms of our quality from a fertility standpoint. And as I started looking more and more into our different, different aspects of laboratory medicine, we find that not just for laboratory, but also for point of care, that these problems are very much agnostic of testing. So it's not just in one specific area or another. So our company is an AI-enabled electronic quality management system. And what we do is that we bring collaboration, so universal collaboration. We bring interoperability with different platforms within the healthcare networks. And we also bring AI integration to help speed up some of the challenges that we have in our healthcare systems.
Super. And can you share your screen? I know you have a presentation you're sharing with us as well.
Oh yeah, I have a 4-slide presentation.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And again, I think the cornerstone here to what we're seeing is that we have a lot of labs around the country, around the world, that are being run by folks that have only been running research studies for maybe 3-6 months. They're research interns, they're postdocs, they're grad students, whatever it might be. And so they're new to the research world, and having your system in place really seems to be making a big difference in at least HITLAB's analyses of what you're putting together. And that is really what is exciting from our standpoint in terms of how digital is really vastly transforming and revolutionizing the research process. I mean, we don't see a ton of digital in that area, but yours is really one of those nice stories. So looks like the screen is up now. So if you could walk people through a little bit about what you guys are doing and how you're really changing the face of medicine and research in medicines with digital technology in the lab management system.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that for this presentation, I focused a little more on healthcare opposed to the research side of it, but a lot of this is transferable. There's absolutely nothing that is siloed to the healthcare space in terms of our system. And what I will say is that, actually, let's just go. So we're focused on, for this presentation, I'm focusing on AI and quality management and testing as it correlates with diagnosis and treatment. So right now in the US, we have about, we have 3 systems that we use in tandem when it comes to our healthcare spaces. We have LIMS, we have EHRs, and we have electronic quality management systems. And a lot of times when we look at the output that we want in terms of patient care, we're looking for safety, we're looking for efficiency, and we're looking to reduce costs. These are the 3 big pillars that we have in our healthcare systems. And we very much focus on LIMS and EHRs because those are very much front-facing. But quality management is something that is a non-negotiable. Not only is it a regulatory requirement, but if we don't infuse that with patient results from the foundation of what we're doing in our healthcare systems, then we could never achieve safety, efficiency, or the desired cost that we want. So at this point, what we are doing is using AI to simplify some of the complexities of quality management as it pertains to testing, diagnosis, and treatment. Like Stan mentioned before, we're not specific to healthcare, but for this conversation, we're going to focus on that. So part of what we're doing is looking into AI-enabled training, AI-enabled workforce optimization, AI-enabled audits and predictive analytics, as well as AI-enabled method validation. And all of these 4 areas that take up a substantial amount of time in terms of just human resources. And when we look at what's happening right now, we have from cradle to grave in America, we run over 14 billion tests annually. And we use that to inform over 70% of medical decisions. And this comes from the laboratory space and also from point of care. So this becomes a huge burden to manage and a huge burden to just get right. So what we've seen is that AI-enabled training, whether it's simulations, whether it's visualizations for workplace monitoring in terms of monitoring what the correct action is and using AI to detect any discrepancies or deviations, that is one way that we could use AI for training, as well as content and resources. We know that in the healthcare space, as well as life science, this is one of the most heavily regulated spaces. So if we're able to provide content and resources at the point in time when it's needed to make those decisions, this is one way that we could really use AI to make training more robust. In terms of workforce optimization, this is another place that AI has huge advantages. So understanding the current pool of individuals that you have in your system and being able to really understand what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, and being able to use AI to actually place your employee based on their skill assessments in a QMS. That is something that we see a huge opportunity for AI. Another one is audits and predictive analytics. So I know that multiple people today have talked about audits and predictive analytics, and at least predictive analytics, and it's no different in a laboratory or a testing space. Audits are done internally and both externally. These are regulatory requirements. They take up a substantial amount of time. And even with an electronic system, it still takes up more time. And that's where AI comes in. How can we use AI to actually make these happen faster? And yes, we have that layer of AI, but also things like interoperability, which our platform offers, also helps out with that quite a bit. So being able to trace information from your LIS to your EHR to your QMS in one comprehensive string of data is something that AI could really help do with the help of interoperability. And then once that's done, we're able to really identify gaps using AI and then suggest remediations. So the final thing I would touch on is AI-enabled method validation. And this is actually the first model that my company, the Proficient Lab, is focused on training. So we're replacing the manpower for subject matter experts and using AI to validate tests and instruments. And for anyone who's familiar with the healthcare space, we know that this takes months. We usually have a manufacturer who comes in, they perform precision, but there are all these other claims that need to, that these instruments or tests need to meet in order to actually be able to provide accurate results for the physicians who, at the end of the day, use these results to drive the medical decisions and provide treatment for patients. So it's extremely important that at that level that we use time-saving tools like AI to be able to validate these methods more appropriately. And by using AI, we're able to shave months off of this type of process and get things going quicker. And this also applies to life science spaces and research spaces. So it's no different. Being able to validate these methods in a more time efficient manner is something that AI brings to the table, and we're very excited to provide. So this is what I have for today. I'd love to kind of continue chatting with Stan, and yeah.
I think we can take some questions too. We've got a few more minutes. And so, from the audience, we certainly have a few questions. One person who's connected with me through LinkedIn is asking a question is, what's the implementation time for your system? And again, you've got, I know, numerous customers. So what's the standard implementation time that you guys use to implement?
So the implementation time, that's a loaded question because it really depends on what part of our system you're trying to implement first. So we have quite a few verticals in there. From a QMS standpoint, there's so much for anyone who understands how a QMS is used. There's so much that goes into it, from your employees to your documents to your data. So if you're coming to us and it's like, I need a space for document control, we could get that implemented in a matter of weeks. If you're starting from scratch, it makes a difference. If you already have processes and procedures in a manual way that you're trying to digitize, then that implementation would be much quicker, opposed to having to build all of that information from scratch. So the short answer is that it really depends on what vertical, what use case you're trying to implement in our QMS, as well as where you're starting from in terms of what you already have. And I would be happy to be introduced to the individual who's asking, so I could kind of explain a little more to them.
No, of course. Another question coming in is around the durability and the ongoing maintenance. How much does a lab manager, when they're implementing this, have to put into maintaining it over the course of a month, kind of a year, a semester, a year kind of thing?
So because of my background in laboratory medicine, part of what makes us really unique is that we don't just look at the data in the platform. We really look at how people interact in the platform, and our system is very interactive, meaning that it's not just the lab manager who has to deal with maintenance, it's the employees have their tasks to do. And because we put in a lot of reporting in our system, the information comes to you in terms of what needs to be maintained. through emails, through options to provide text to yourself, to just reporting that you're able to see on a dashboard or different search functions. So in terms of maintenance, it is minimal because the information is coming to you opposed to you having to search in there to figure out where things are or what's in a process and what's overdue. So I would say it's minimal.
That's brilliant. And in terms of the future, one last question, what does the future look like for you guys over the next 5 years?
So the future looks like, the future lies with collaboration and interoperability. I think that is something that is severely lacking in quality management systems. It's handled in a silo. A lot of times the importance of it is missed. So being able to be interoperable with other systems in a healthcare space, whether it's the LIS, the EHR, using middleware for different point of care devices or different instruments. I think the future is interoperability and the future is collaboration. So having one platform where whether we're in Europe or whether we're in the US, we could collaborate on a specific data set. That is very important. So in terms of quality management, being able to see the full spectrum of quality management from start to finish when you look at a single result for a patient is the future. And having AI be able to give you more data on that full spectrum and predictive analytics on that full spectrum without isolating it to just a quality management system or just an LIS system is where we're heading in the future.
Tell the audience a little bit more about the number of implementations you have. Again, we've obviously tested your platform. It's bulletproof. It's just absolutely first-class commercial grade. Tell the audience about some of your just how many implementations, customers you have, users, which is a different metric you guys carry, and then how expansive you're growing and how quickly you're growing.
Yeah, we have, in terms of implementation, one of the biggest implementations that we've done so far is about 90 different sites across the US, spanning from the East Coast all the way to Hawaii. That type of implementation did take longer just because there were hundreds of individuals who needed to be onboarded. So that's kind of one of the more vast implementations that we've had in the oncology space. We've had some smaller implementations in the fertility space where we've been dealing with teams of 20, 30. So yeah, we've seen both spectrums of implementation. Did I answer that question?
No, it's fantastic. And I think that helps give the audience, especially the buyers and the people who are in the lab management space on the show, an idea of what it looks like and how it looks like and how it's rolling out, right? Because that's so important for folks these days. Everyone's operating at a reduced cost structure and reduced infrastructure support level. So the ability to not only implement simply, but also being able to implement efficiently is absolutely of the utmost importance, right?
Absolutely. And I think something that is missed a lot of time is the way data is visualized. And I like to use the phrase a mountaintop view, because a lot of times we implement systems across different networks, and it's very much siloed in terms of, even if we're using the same system, it's a matter of logging out of this site to get into this site and logging out of this site. And you can't possibly visualize data in a holistic way by using a method like that. And we really do have a top of the mountain view where now you could see everything and you're able to piece that information out in every which way that you need to actually understand what's happening in your organization at a more granular level. So that's something that's very important to the design of what we're providing.
That's wonderful. Well, again, Unica, thank you so much for joining today, and looking forward to hearing many more good things about your development and your overall growth in the ecosystem over the next few years.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. Actually, I think I just got a camera.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Of our last session, as we're rounding out hour number 3 of Symposium number 2 in February of 2025. And what better way to finish off the symposium about heart health than to talk about AI and cardiology with New York City's own Dr. Sajid Bursi from the Upper East Side cardiology practice. And again, Sajid, thank you for joining us today, and know that you're running around treating patients. So thank you for joining us on your cell phone, and appreciate you being able to connect. Maybe you can give our audience a brief description about who you are and what you do.
Sure.
You're
Thanks for having me on, Stan. It's always great to be part of the HITLAB and progression of technology. So yeah, I'm a board certified cardiovascular physician on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I started this practice in 2020 during COVID to really integrate emerging technology into reinvigorating healthcare, especially as it relates to a one-on-one personal level, and especially as it relates to cardiology and heart health, both because of my interest in it, but also my own personal experience living as a patient with heart disease. So it is true to my heart. So we started this whole AI discussion when AI really came about last year, and that's when we really wanted to talk about how we utilized AI. We started utilizing AI for our documentation purposes, and the utilization of a virtual scribe, essentially, that has a full transcript of your whole interaction with a patient without you losing eye contact with a patient, and then formulating a appropriate billable note that is appropriate and billable to the level of treatment and diagnoses, the number of diagnoses, and the time spent with the patient, the complexity of the patient. That is all hashed out and taken care of with our AI transcription service. The notes are seamless. The back office stuff, or the back end of cardiology and cardiac practice, has really seen a positive shift with both documentation, administration, billing, appropriate appointment setting, follow-ups. Things have become a lot smoother. So, and the back end part of cardiology, we're seeing excellent improvement. And if you haven't adopted this in your practice or your field, I got to say, you're already a year behind. And this is exactly what I said when we first started. After 5G started after 2020 and digital health. If you haven't done it by now, you're already behind. But really, what we're seeing a lot this year, and what I would hope to continue to adopt in our practice, is front end or diagnostician, clinician-based AI usage. And we're seeing some early technology come out that I'm really excited to start using and incorporating in terms of our diagnoses. And remember, this is diagnoses to prevent heart disease, the #1 cause of death in the world, where somebody dies every 34 seconds. And so new technologies that are emerging, well, EKGs or electrocardiograms, the basis of every cardiology visit, mostly every doctor visit and hospital visit. But it takes years to interpret it and years to understand the nuances of it. Well, there are new technologies coming out that are trying to go over and machine learn several EKGs that are normal and that are abnormal. But they are trying to go even beyond that. They're trying to understand that how AI can utilize ECGs in finding subtle phenotypic changes. I'll be using that word a little more frequently, this one. So phenotype, meaning other changes in the EKG that may not necessarily correlate with what you're looking for or what you're trying to diagnose with the patient in front of you, but other factors that may bring new diagnoses in the differential to really help broaden the differential and really answer the why, in terms of why is the patient here and why are they feeling what they're feeling, in a more efficient manner, without losing the human touch with the patient. And in fact, this allows us to open up more with the patient. The other new technology in cardiology that we're seeing that's coming out is echocardiogram interpretations. Echocardiography is very important for us to understand the heart. Echocardiography is a very data-heavy, physics-related imaging modality where we can calculate so many hemodynamic factors. It is astounding. Now, taking all those factors and having machine learning involved, well, again, that takes not only the data and the numbers that we get about each person's heart, But also, machine learning is starting to understand, what if we look at other data points that we may not necessarily have reported as a number, but as an image point, as a point of motion of the heart, as a point of flow or velocity that we wouldn't really consider being part of our diagnoses, but again, incorporating other phenotypes and having AI understand the phenotypes that may be involved in helping us in our differential diagnosis, I think is the next level in cardiology, that front office diagnostician stuff. Look, there are a lot of caveats though with AI. You know, we're dealing with life and death. So a misinterpretation of an EKG or an echocardiogram can be life or death. And so machine learning is just iteration and learning based off of what we put in. So any little error that we're putting in to have these machines learn physiology, well, that's just going to be exponentially amplified and really bad for the progression of AI, but most importantly for our patients and patient care. So
yeah,
there is progress, and you know, you're either part of it or you're not. But I think everybody should be part of it. And we're definitely seeing larger EMRs and big healthcare systems put in a lot of money and effort, and departments alone for just AI. So
that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And what we're seeing at the lab and what we study is we're seeing a lot of folks are using AI for more administrative functions like billing and optimized note submissions and claim adjudications and things like that. Transcription, you know, AI for transcribing office visits when they're visiting with patients and in the exam room. And then, like you just mentioned, a lot more on the clinical side in looking at, you know, where maybe something was missed on the clinical exam and how AI could help almost provide like a spell check for physicians so that AI is there, like what you saw with the Mayo Clinic, where they went through all of their oncology records and they actually found they missed 500 cancer patients. And so that's a very interesting case study. So tell us, in terms of your practice, you guys are super busy. You guys are one of the premier cardiology practices in New York City. What are you using AI to make your life easier and make the patient's experience better?
So talking about patient experience and making my life easier, more in the front end, less in the back end, which was last year, is really utilizing newer clinical diagnostic procedures and imaging modalities, but now adding the AI supplement. So EKGs we know, but now adding AI to it. Echoes we can interpret, but now adding the AI overread to it. We're seeing a lot of this right now in cardiac CTA. So cardiac coronary calcium scores is becoming quite a large screening method and a preferred screening method for a lot of our population. And studies have come out saying that screening calcium scores and screening CAT scans, the earlier, the better. Now, with that, two companies, Clearly and HeartFlow, have become immensely large because what they actually do is they utilize AI. They'll take your patient's CAT scan, utilize AI, and actually perform mini stress tests on lesions to see if this is something that needs a stent, if this is a significant lesion, or is this something that we can get by with medical therapy. But again, this is an answer as to, is this patient have disease that requires a hospitalization and invasive procedure, or can we save patients from going to the hospital even more? And finally, catching disease and then preventing and treating it before patients have heart attacks or need intervention in the hospital setting. So yes, I mean, it is full forward in cardiology. Really big in the imaging modalities right now, which I'm not surprised, and I feel like that's going to be a big push this year.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for joining our program today, Dr. Bursey, and just congratulations on all your success and all the improvements you're making to patients' lives around New York City and abroad. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Wrap for Symposium number 2, February 2025, on the digital health journey that we're all taking to improve the accessibility, the affordability, and the outcomes for patients' care using digital technologies. Don't forget to register for next month's program, including leaders from life sciences, healthcare providers, as well as health plans and startups and investors. And following that, again, we have a number of other things happening. Most importantly, we want to thank our superb all-star elite team on the executive education and events side of HITLAB's work. Obviously, the practice is quite big, but this could not happen without all of the tremendous efforts from Rachel Fredman, Ansley, certainly Raymond, Pallavi, Melissa, Jerry, Sammy, Nico Hughes, and Rejo Joy, but really our fearless leader, Ansley Bowen. Thank you, Ansley Bowen, for all of the tremendous leadership you provide to this program each and every week, and certainly every month and every semester with the summit. And don't forget to tune in for next week. And please remember that we love our sponsors. These are the folks that make this program possible every month and help support our executive education and events division each and every week with the Women's Health Tech Wednesdays and the monthly symposia and the semesterly summits. So thank you very much to the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, Helix, VM, Fox, Rothschild, the Information Mediary Corporation, FFF Enterprises, Silicon Valley Bank, and Versally from the great company Kenvue. On that note, have a great rest of February, how few days it is, and we will see you again at the end of March. Thanks, everybody. Take good care.